now? Good to go? Okay. We're going to open the meeting by introducing our council here, starting on my left.
Dan Haggerty.
Tamar Powell.
Michelle Weil is absent right now. Lynn Erickson.
Dave Olson.
Sarah Tupac. Barbara Matheson.
I'm sitting here as special guest. Later on. Okay, as I sent out a special note for this meeting, the first item on our agenda are basically the supervisor's report and other public officials. We're going to go with, instead of the supervisor's report, because I'm assuming you're the first item on the agenda, and we'll pick up all your comments there. So, we're going to start with Nicholas Calderon here from County Parks. I'm going to give him speaker's position first, and then I have several speaking slips. Which one go through? What's that?
Yeah, there are other ways.
You want to go first, or would you like to?
Harvey, you want to go first?
Harvey? Sure. Okay.
Okay, all right. Let's switch.
Harvey, you are back.
Hey, kids.
Bay. Never seen so many people. It's really wonderful to see citizen enthusiasm.
If you speak a little louder or closer to the microphone, please, it won't bite you.
These don't amplify.
The
It's not
microphone
an
does
amplifier,
not make
It's
it
closer.
louder. I'll just speak louder.
Well, it's important that everybody please be silent while people are speaking.
We need to tell people in the background too.
Can you hear me? I'm back.
Yes, thank you.
Good. I just have two brief comments to make. Just a few days ago, the City Council finalized our loan agreement with Abundant Grace for the Workforce Development Center. The City Council is contributing $300,000, as is the county. So people who say that we're not doing anything to help homelessness, right true, we're doing what we can. And it's tough, but Abundant Grace is a wonderful organization, and this Workforce Development Center is going to provide showers, a place to meet with service agencies, computer access to people who ordinarily wouldn't have it. So Eric Devoni is executive director. He's done a wonderful job. He's already got many jobs for a lot of the homeless people there. And he takes them out to the farm twice a week. And the homeless people learn how to become farmers. The food that they bring back is distributed for free. So it's like a win-win situation. It's a really fine organization, and we're glad to support them in any way we can. The second item, a little more controversial. At the last City Council meeting, there was public comment about the desirability of having a single unified coastside city. And I understand that this has been talked about for 40 years. It's not going to be something that is going to be resolved overnight. There was a very long thread on Nextdoor about the desirability of having a unified coastside city. I personally am interested in what Midcoast people have to say about their
You can't get.
I personally, as a city council, are interested in what Midcoast people have to say about their feelings about forming a single unified coastside city. There's so many arguments for and against it, I wouldn't even begin to talk about that. But it's just to start the ball rolling to see what the community up here thinks. So that's important. see a lot of dog enthusiasts here. If you look at this week's Half Moon Bay Review magazine, you're going to see my dog, Pepper. She's the dog of the month.
Thank you, Harvey.
Go on.
Okay, the next person up will be Nicholas Calderon. Now, for this part of the meeting, Nicholas will do some comments. I have a set of speaker slips here, all of whom want to talk on some track, so I'll call that in order. And then, as we finish that discussion, and this is the part of the meeting where the council itself does not participate in an interaction of what's being said. This will be a situation where there may be some comments from the audience, but for the contract, I'm looking for these speakers to do the primary speaking. So Nicholas, if you would lead on.
Thank you, Lynn. So, earlier this week, it was brought to the county's attention that there was a pump track constructed at Quarry Park by members of the community. And when we were made aware of this, we initially made the decision that we were going to be removing the pump track. Reason being, it was not built with permission, and it also did not go through the necessary permitting process. And so, yesterday, crews were on site to remove it. I personally went out and met with a couple of the community members, walked the course with some of the people, and I was asked to at least wait until we had the opportunity to have this meeting tonight so that I can address the public and the public will be able to address me as well. And so during the conversation with the community members, what became very clear is that having this pump track is extremely important to the community. And I hear that loud and clear. And what we want to do is offer the community an opportunity to have a pump track that has gone through the appropriate process. It's been approved by the county. It's gone through the review process. It's been appropriately designed, and it's been constructed through all the right means, so that not just the community today can enjoy this pump track, but future generations will also be able to enjoy this pump track. So while we are not able to allow people to use that pump track that was built without permission, what we are committing to is launching the public process to design a pump track in Quarry Park, and then start the construction process as soon as those designs are done and have been appropriately reviewed for environmental impact. So this is something that we would be looking to launch within the next 4 weeks, and we would like to invite everyone to participate in this process. This is something that we genuinely believe is a great opportunity for the department and the community to partner, not just to figure out what it is that you want from a contract, but to also to construct it and to maintain it and to really have a partnership in ownership over this community asset. So I wanted to make sure that I had the opportunity to come out here and let you all know that we hear what you're saying loud and clear, and you want a contract, and we want to give you a contract that goes through the right process, and that's what we're committing to tonight.
Nick, what does that process take time-wise, and what's your target date for completion?
Excuse me. So that, the base of your comments there. I'm going to go to the speakers now. This is for comments on the pump track. I'd like them all to speak first, and then we'll look at where we might take the process after that.
In the meantime, just due to a limited amount of space, I'm going to stand over here and then I'll address them at the end, if that's okay with everyone.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I apologize. Everyone, I got it. Speak right.
The first speaker up is Barbara Dye.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see so many community members here. I'm Barbara Dye. I'm the Vice President of the Granada Community Services District, which you know has parks responsibility, which this community gave us 5 years ago. We have been working really hard to try to satisfy this community's need for a contract. We've been working closely with the county on plans in Quarry Park. I can't speak for the whole board in terms of future votes, but we have already unanimously agreed that we would pay the cost of installing a contract in Quarry Park. we're here, we actually have funding. We are ready to work with the council to try to make this a reality, and I think the idea that we can fast track this in Quarry Park is terrific, and I thank you all for your patience.
Thank you, Barbara. The next speaker is Nancy Marsh.
Nancy's going to defer her time to Michelle Bradley.
Speaker after that is Nancy Marsh. Michelle Dragon.
My name is Michelle Dragany, and I'm on the GCSD Parks and Recs committee, and I'm on the pump track subcommittee. And what I'm going to read right now is been approved by all the people in GCSD. So let's start with problem solution. Problem, we have no local control. Solution, negotiate a use permit maybe for a 2-year period as a pilot, or until the master plan is complete for the pump track area of the Murata Surf East to GCSD, Parks and Rec. We managed to successfully move the jetty skate ramp from Caltrans to the GCSD property. Caltrans, MCC, and GCSD worked in concert with each other to support this popular community recreation. According to the last QP master plan draft we've seen, the pump track will become part of the larger QP park plan that you are working with. GCSD has formed a pump track task force to help accelerate design and build a community volunteer group. They are now applying for nonprofit status to build and maintain it. GCSD has also offered to provide funding, and we have approached SMC Parks Foundation as well. If GCSD takes over the current track on a use permit, GCSD will acquire the insurance and safety signage for the pump track, as we did for the skate ramp. Problem, environmental impact. Solution, this area has been a working area for the El Granada Fire Suppression Project. There's a ton of eucalyptus branch and leaf fall. The pump track was built with hand tools, mindful of the environment. The county was going to use a bulldozer blade, see the pictures below on my website post, to remove the pump track. I hope you see the irony. The county also said they did not have to pull a permit. That's a hypocrisy. The same neg deck less than significant approach is used by other agencies on the coast side, like, for instance, the EIR for Gray Whale Cove, the Midcoast Crosswalks, the SFPUC Montera Mountain North Peak closure. That's just this year. There's no environmental impact at the pump track site. Problem, the pump track was built without county permit. Solution, permit after the fact, via the use permit negotiation with GCSD. Keep it closed and intact until signage and insurance can be put in place by GCSD as we did with the skate ramp. Problem, wetlands, see below map. Solution, there are no wetlands at the pump track site. There's quite a bit of wetland at the west end of the Murata Surf East. Santiago and Morro are on the raised ground at the eastern tip of the property. It is in a eucalyptus grove. Problem, drainage. Solution, the pump track is in a eucalyptus forest with lots of duff. The pump track team design avoids puddling. The PT team will maintain the area working with the county, who owns the western part of the Murata Surf East property. Problem, liability. Solution, liability argument is false, as public agencies are immune from liability on recreational trail use. For the jetty skate ramp, GCSD's lawyer and insurance company approved the liability side. Text below. Problem, trash and maintenance. Solution, Team Pump Track removes 6 bags of garbage over the holidays. They have every motivation to maintain the track. The GCSD Recreation can sponsor and promote regular site cleanup days and could explore placement of public trash cans as part of our recall contract. Problem, kids are growing up faster than the county can respond to their recreational needs. Solution, let GCSD Parks and Recs take care of the current pump track permitted and maintained. They will also work with the GCSD Pump Track Task Force to accelerate development of a permanent pump track in the most appropriate location in the park, perhaps Q. Problem. Coastside communications with the county is not very good. I believe later on tonight's agenda is a hopeful presentation from a consultant on how to improve county to coastside communication. Solution. Let GCSD Parks and Recs communicate, respond, and act locally. Top problem, last one, kids' health. Solution. There's very little fun for kids stuff to do on the coast. As 3% of the San Mateo County population, we get little attention and poor communication. Kids outgrow the playgrounds at around 8 years old, and there's little for the 9 to 14 crowd to do unsupervised. The skate ramp and the pump track are fantastic fits for this key age group, and both are low cost and low maintenance, and have an energetic group of local community volunteers, including the kids themselves. The ask: do not destroy the pump track. Keep it signed and closed as we did to the jetty ramp. Start a conversation over the above problem solutions with the GCSD Parks and Recs pump track committee. Put pump track on next MCC and GCSD agendas. And it's already on the GCSD agenda. Lease pump track back to GCSD. Allow GCSD to sign, insure, and manage the pump track.
All right, Chris Johnson, resident of El Granada. And it's hard to follow Michelle. So there's all the solutions. Supervisor Horsley and Director Calderon. There are solutions. This can be done. It is done. Michelle gave numerous examples just this year. Permitting after the fact can happen. It can be done. Now, I understand that it was done without permission. I don't think there's anybody in the room that can legitimately say that it was not done without permission or without permit. Those are unassailable facts. True. But I think we need to look, when you think about what can be done, why this track was built over this break. It was built over this break. I personally have stood at this podium since 2013 when my son was 5, saying, excuse me, my son is 5. We have nothing. When will it happen? Well, it's going to happen. We're working on it. We're past Measure G. We're getting there. GCSD, thank you, Barbara. We're working on it. 2014, 15, 16, 17, there's still nothing. So then we go through the master plan for Quarry Park, where there's a pump track discussed. But when was the last time there was even a meeting on that? A draft was reviewed. It's March 2018. That's almost 2 years ago. This is why it happened over the break. People are desperate. Look at the amount of kids. People are desperate. They've been asking, and we've been told you can't do it, and the master plan is in hiatus, so we can't do it either, county's saying. So nobody can do it. People have been volunteering their time and their materials, like they did with the skate ramp. They went out and built it. So the fact of the matter is it is built now. Illegally and without permit, but it is built, and there's all the time stuff happens that gets permitted after the fact. Michelle had a great list of actionable solutions. I just want to remind Nicholas and Don again why the people did this over the break. They knew it was without permission and not permitted, but they also knew that it is something that is desperately needed and wanted. And I rode by there on Sunday, and I was flabbergasted with an antline of kids, 20, 30 kids, as young as some of these kids, doing this track with smiles on their face that were just bring a tear to your eye. And so I know it's hard. I applaud your courage, Nicholas, for coming tonight. And all, I mean, you know how it goes. But also, thank you for staying yesterday's destruction, so you can at least hear what we have to say. Len, thank you for giving me the time. And every single person that's here, especially anybody that's under the age of 18, thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
here that are really interested in hearing what the speaker has to say. There are several microphones up there that are not
There are
used.
no speakers. This is not going into a
It's all
loudspeaker.
recorded.
It's voice only.
Okay.
These are for the video.
We don't.
It's fine.
We're above room capacity. We have fire marshal problems.
Everybody will be able to watch the video. Just go to our
Thank
website.
you.
All right, thanks. Susanna Cantrell, I'm a local El Granadian. I've been here on the coast 4 years, I guess now, but I've been riding, hiking, and spending a lot of time in Quarry Park since I think 2005. So fortunately was able to move out here. And I'm an avid mountain biker. Familiar with pump tracks, have been riding them off and on for years. And I am a grandmother, so I'm probably one of the few grandmas that's been out on the initial pump track out here and riding Quarry Park all the time. It's one of my grandsons, wherever he disappeared to. Got 5 grandkids. And I got to watch them over the holidays really enjoy the pump track. This one in particular refused to get on a bike until we saw this. And it was just done so well. It was very appealing. And like it's been said, there were so many kids having a lot of fun out there. He jumped on a bike and I can now say goodbye, right? So it's been a great experience, and there's a lot of friends I already knew that were at the track, but a lot of families that I hadn't met. So just the sense of community that brought over that holiday period was something that what I saw in El Granada and has enhanced the community in this very short period of time. I have been a PAC member for 2 years, and part of the reason that I was interested in joining the Parks Advisory Committee was to help get a pump track in the community, because I've seen in other communities that I've lived and my husband Brad has lived. These are family-oriented, real community centers, if you will. But there's other things in the community that have been really important to bring it up as well. But I think for me, it's been frustrating. I work in commercial industry. I'm a CCO at a company, and I thought with my experiences, I could come in and help move things along with the other PAC members. And it's just the process. When I hear process, I just want to pass out because I get it. I know there's things that have to do, but the process isn't working for our community. So let's look at ways to change the process or amend the process to make it work for our community. I second everything that's been said so far, and some of the things that they say are problems and why we can't do this. For instance, the environmental impact. I have a doctorate degree in biochemistry. I worked with the EPA and the USGS way back in the day. But these things are getting thrown out, and I think it's a little cowardly to hide behind the policies and the things that have been said, environmental impact. All these things can be addressed and overcome as been stated today. So I think those are the key points, but the big thing for me, and then the last point is just the health of the community as a whole. And I see these numbers, being in the healthcare industry, and you see the obesity and addiction. These are not just kid problems, they're family problems. And to have centers to get people off their iPads, away from the TV, and to focus on things that are family and community can change those stats. We're not immune here in El Granada and San Mateo County, those stats, look them up. They're pretty grim. And just little things like this are really big, and I think can change the trajectory on things like that. So
Thank you.
that's all I have to say.
Next, I'm going to go back to Nicholas.
Yeah, no, I want to appreciate it. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. It seems about 5 years ago, I was in this exact room when Moss Beach Playground was in jeopardy and having a very similar conversation. At that point in time, I was working for Supervisor Worsley, and we committed to making sure that resource was made protected and available for the community and followed through on that. And tonight, what I'm sitting here and promising to you is that we're going to launch this process. What I've heard is that the master plan what I've heard is that the master plan process has been taking too long and it's too slow. And what we're committing to do is to not wait till the end of the master plan process to start the pump track process. We would start the pump track process and work that simultaneously with the master plan process. So So we will, so we will be bringing the master plan out to the MCC and the community in March, but before that, we will have our first public meeting on what is it that the community would like to see in the design for a pump track. We will be working with Granada Community Service District to talk about the funding. And the question was asked, how long this takes. You know, the way we envision it, right now today, we were spending our time reaching out to other agencies that have pump tracks to understand how long their design process took, and to understand how long it takes to appropriately design and permit this. The good news is we have the support, we have the park to put it in, and so those are two big hurdles that are now out of the way. So the concern that the master plan is slowing down is no longer an issue. We are going to move the pump track quicker than the master plan. So that's what we're committed to doing today. Cool. Yeah, so 12 months. Our goal is if we can work with the community and we can collaborate, we can have it constructed in 12 months.
How about in the
Excuse me,
meantime?
hold on. Please keep your voice down.
Exactly, we have.
12 months is the quickest we can absolutely commit to, and we're committing to doing it.
Yeah.
Look, I can't speak for the department on what happened 3, 4, 7 years ago and why something wasn't done. What I can do as the director of this department for the last 5 weeks is sit here before you and tell you that this is what we're committed to doing and this is what we're going to do. And for those of you out here who I've worked with in the 9 years that I've worked at the county, I have a very good reputation that if I say I'm going to do something, I stand by it, and I will come out here and allow you to hold me accountable for that.
Well, could you keep the track open in
Right.
the meantime?
Can it stay open?
Yeah.
It was
Hold
built
it.
in less
Excuse
than
me.
2 weeks, so 12 months is ridiculous.
Well, it's been here 2 weeks.
Excuse me. Excuse me. So, need to know what specific answer to that.
We cannot allow that to be used. It wasn't built with permission. We didn't go through it to be used.
Override it.
You know what, they're gonna ride, people ride their bikes on trails all the time, so they're just riding their bikes on a trail.
I hear what you're saying.
We're talking about playing in the dirt. It's perspective here. The kids are out playing in the dirt.
Look, I had an opportunity to walk it yesterday. This isn't playing in the dirt. This is.
Ride it, you'll enjoy it, you'll understand what these kids are here for.
Excuse me.
I appreciate the frustration. I really do, and that's why I came out here yesterday, and that's why I'm out here. I appreciate the frustration. That's why I came out here yesterday to meet with people. That's why I'm out here in front of you all tonight. And instead of sending a written statement, I came out here to be in front of you face to face because I value what you're saying, and that's why I'm making a promise to you face to face. And that's the best I can commit to. And I will be out here as much as you want me to make sure that this stays on track, and to make sure that at the end of this, you have a pump track that is allowed, that's authorized, that's gone through the right approval process, and that will be here not just for a month, for a year, but will be here for decades. And that the kids here who get to ride it when it's done will get to bring their kids back and ride it with their kids. That's what you're getting at the end of this, which is amazing. And that's what I'm committing to doing.
Okay, I want to make a comment in terms of what we're doing in this meeting here. This is the opening section of the MCC's meeting. Nicholas has come in as a county official to address an issue, and we've extended more opportunity for public comment and some degree of interchange there. This is not a decision-making body either for the MCC or for the county. This is set up as the information part of the meeting. I have 5 more speakers with slips, and I'll give them each 1 minute there. I'd like to go through them, and then we'll determine how to bring this to a close. This is 1 minute. First up is Troy Davis. Troy Davis.
Yeah, you know, the microphone doesn't work, there's a lot of kids.
No, there's not, the microphone doesn't
You won't be on the video.
This
You're not
records you
on the
for the video.
Okay.
Can you tell us who's on deck? Can you tell us who's next?
The next up would be PJ Monica.
PJ, excuse me guys. Come over.
You're on deck. You're on deck.
All right. My name's Troy Davis. I live in Montana. Me and my kids come to El Granada quite a bit. This statement here is actually from the Burns family on behalf of Tara and Eric and myself and my wife. Here it is. To whom it may concern, my husband, Eric, and I wanted to voice our support for the people, especially the kids, that have been using the pump track in El Granada. Our children have opportunity after opportunity for physical activities stolen from them. Every day, PE is gone. After-school sports is often out of reach, and they are being consumed by electronics. The days of sandlot baseball and pickup basketball have been curtailed due to regulation, permitting, and so much more. The kids are faced with consequences of this loss through health issues, behavioral problems, mental instability, and a lack of social connection. The kids of this area fixed the problem we saddled them with, and now that solution is being threatened. Should the pump track be destroyed or banned, we are not only taking a tremendous opportunity for physical activity away from our children, but also telling them that the resolution to a problem wasn't fit. As founders of that, Let Them Play Foundation, 18-year residents of the coastside, and parents to 3 active kiddos, we dearly hope that the leaders of this space recognize what an awesome place this track is, and that we preserve the space for the greatest purpose, the education and enjoyment of the kids. Let's work together to create the best possibility and situation. After all, most of us live here to be a little closer to the way we grew up. Let them play.
Thank you. That will be followed by Donald Shipperdown.
There's like 4 more speakers. They each got a minute. Just need to be quiet.
Good evening, my name is Peter Monica. I teach at Cunha School. This year I've been lucky enough to teach a bike class, 6th grade elective. So I'm lucky enough to teach about 100 kids a year about bikes. So that's my passion. And I wanted to share a couple journal entries from students regarding this issue. I'm going to leave this with you so you can read the rest of them. This one here, if you can make discussion to bulldoze, if you can make the decision to bulldoze the bike track, where tons and tons of kids at different ages, ethnicities, and many such were having the best time, sweating and smiling without a second thought, you obviously have never known the thrill of riding bikes. People, real people, took the time to build this pump track for kids for the sole purpose of riding. It takes kids off the couch, off their phones, riding through all these trees and feeling the breeze in the air. You took it away just like that. What you need to understand is when things like this, pump tracks are the reason people get up and go outside to break, sweat and laugh with their friends. You don't just get to take it away from them. It's the powerful against the powerless. This no thought about who will win, so stop for just a second and think about what you're taking away. Just a second is all we ask. 6th grader.
Thank you very much. Next up will be Juliet Colza.
For 30 years I rode bikes around here, and I feel bad for these kids, because for 30 years I have now my kid, we illegally built jumps up in the hills here, okay, really dangerous. My kid had to get his buddy out when he broke his leg. This is down where you can get access to medical help. So you're going to drive these kids illegally up into the hills, you know. I'm really pleased that Supervisor Don Horsley came here tonight. He's an ex-chief of the Sheriff's Department, and he realizes how important this is for young kids to do this. You do this to these kids, and don't go complaining. they start going off the track, so to speak, you know. And so we need to get something done right now. This year thing is not enough, and I tell you what, the main reason I came here tonight is it's disgusting the way it parks. I volunteered for years clearing out the Quarry Park before it got taken over by the parks, and it is a fire hazard there. And you need to do what you need to do with your fire hazard equipment, and not take these kids pump track down. That's what you need to do, and I can't stress that enough.
Thank
I
you
mean,
very
it's just disgusting that the kids have not got something like that here.
Next speaker would be Rhonda Lazari.
Good evening, Juliet Fulda.
Quiet, please.
First of all, I just want to look around the room and just see this community. I just want to say this community is awesome. This came up, I believe, yesterday. I just heard a few hours ago about it. And look what we have right here. There's more people out the stairway. So I want to first say thank you to the community and all of you guys that are here tonight that came from the county and listened. And I saw the video that was put together. And the fact that this many people stood up so quick, obviously the community is saying something. I hope you'll listen. We even have signs. That's pretty cool. I am here on behalf of, I'm a mother of 10 children. And how many are in the room? I think 3 or 4. And I really love it when my kids are out playing. I just got to say that right now. And they're off the video games. They're not in the street. We live in East Miramar, just a block or 2 from, and they go to Ogonaw School, so this is their playground. And I've been hearing all about this. I actually haven't been out there to see it. I saw the video. But I didn't, and 2 nights ago at dinner, I heard about these bulldozers. And I'm like, what do you mean? What are you guys talking about? And Julian says, Mom, I go out there like 3 hours a day. And look at this. This is so cool. So I'm hoping that you'll hear us. Obviously, you are. You're here. I will just say one thing. With all due respect to the county process, I've got many planning and building permits in my day, and I've been to the San Mateo process, and I hear a year at best right now. And I'll just say, like, that's an estimate at best, as you said. And I would ask during this year, if it really is a year, I think that'd be great, but that's a year of their lives, not being able to play out there. Remember, in perspective, we're talking about kids playing out literally in a field. And I don't think there's been any concrete barriers or anything constructed as far as I've seen. If we're talking about dirt and then playing on their bikes, I'm confused by all of this in perspective of what we're talking about. I understand there's regulations for reasons to keep them safe, but right now I would just ask, let's please keep this in perspective, and I would want to please have you guys consider leaving the pump track in place until it is upgraded to what you guys see sufficient. I would just ask to consider that.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Hi, my name is Rhonda Fedoni, and I'm here as a mother of 3 children who live in El Granada and a professional in the community. And I'm here to let you know that this group of children is just a neighborhood of kids who came together with an amazing community of families in this last 10 days and created a pump track from dirt and logs. And my oldest son, who is 8, was out there, and he was so proud of the fact that he got to go out and spend his break raking and working on this pump track and then riding it. And I know that a lot of the children that are here who are so young, they were all a part of this. They were part of the building process. They were part of just being out there enjoying it. They met with their friends. Their excitement about going out over the winter break and spending that time out there was what it was all about. And that's what we're really hoping that the pump track in 12 months will have. My question is what the concern is about these dirt and logs that they play in the meantime. Is it litigation? Like, what is the concern? And so for those of us who are asking, why can't this pump track stay for these next 12 months? It's not, anything unbelievable. It's just dirt and logs, and they're just having a great time out there. So we'd like to know maybe a little bit more about what the concerns are about having these kids play in an area where they've always played. They just created a trail and a space to congregate and meet together there. So if we could get a little more information on why that has to be put aside while this new process is happening, then we can respect the process maybe a little bit easier.
Thank you very much. At this point in the process, that the MCC is here to conduct its meeting. We've caught this in the front end as comment. The MCC itself cannot speak to this issue. We could have another meeting next week and agendize it there in some form. The only people who can, I think, provide further comment here are two people from the county. That would be Supervisor Horsley and Nicholas.
Okay, don't all boo at once. I haven't seen the pump track. I would, before I make a decision, I'd like to spend a couple of weeks looking at it. And if some group of you want to come with me, I'm happy to do that. But I'd like to know a little bit more about it. And I do know that, some other comments had to do with the fact that about the fire. We are concerned about fire because there actually have been wildland fires on the coast that they killed about 18 people. It wasn't in the 1920s, I think, and it really fire that came from the Pacific, wiped out Montana, and came all the way to Alvarado. We have all those eucalyptus trees. And so we have been running with Cal Fire fire breaks in Road Park. We've done a lot of work. One of the things I want to make sure. Somebody said something about no liability. Well, tell me, how come we lost $42 million in a kid that was injured in one of our parks? So we do have liability.
No, it's on trails.
No. No, I'm telling you, we have liability if something that happens in any of our parks. Somebody gets hurt, somebody will pay, and generally the county. But that's neither here nor there. So let me, before I make a decision, and I will come back in a couple of weeks to let you know what we decide to do. So I'm not going to send you a letter in 2 weeks, say one way or the other. I'll come back. You need 2 weeks, or your next meeting, whatever it is.
So,
we'll come back.
just to clarify on that point, the next possible MCC dates are on the 15th, that would be next week, or the 29th. The 29th, which is 3 weeks out. So.
That's fine. 3 weeks. Give me 3 weeks to look at it.
Okay.
So we keep the contract for 3 weeks until you can look at it and think about it?
I'm not going to make that decision.
So what I'm hearing, summarize and see if two county people have it right. What Supervisor Horsley is saying is he requests everything to stay in place. He wants 3 weeks to consider the situation. Talking to Nicholas, who says Don is the supervisor, he says that's okay with him. From an MCC standpoint, we can convene a meeting the week of the 29th, a regular meeting, and have that on the agenda as seems appropriate, if it seems appropriate. So that's really all the business that we can conduct here tonight. I think we've had an excellent reporting, hopefully, with everything that was done here. I want to thank everybody for your participation and excellent behavior, even young folks down there. So what we're going to do now is close off this part of the meeting to allow all of you who have come just for this issue to leave. So there'll be about a 5-minute break, and then we'll continue with our regular meeting.
Sorry, the one thing I do want to say, 2 things I want to say. As we move forward, this is a community process. This is a community partnership. So while I'm thrilled to see all of you here tonight, I look forward more so to seeing you during the public process for designing this pump track. And when it comes time to building it, I look forward to working with all of you with shovels and with whatever other equipment we need to get the pump track built. So I look forward to seeing you all there. As we at the county go through our assessment, though, and we look at it and we have these conversations, we're going to have to keep it closed. And we ask that while we go through this process, you respect the closure, and we continue, we just request that you respect the closure and while we go through our process. And I will come back to the supervisor in 3 weeks as well.
Why is it going to take 3 weeks to look at it?
That's the next
meeting we could schedule. So look, I want to thank everybody for being here. There's been many large group meetings here. This is probably the largest and also
I just want to say that this is on the GCSD agenda for next Thursday's meeting, and we are committed to being engaged in the process and helping in any way we can.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to take a 5-minute break to allow those who want to. Back to order. We're still on comments by public officials. We have Grace Johnson, who's been involved in policy sessions. who's going to give a report, and then I have two speaker requests to follow up on that. Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, Glenn. Right, so I am a member of the San Mateo County Parks Dog Committee, serving as kind of a liaison to the MCC, so I'm reporting to the MCC tonight on the status of the dog committee. So as you know, we're working on a pilot program for an off-leash. We've the committee has identified 2 areas for sure, which will be in the off-leash pilot program, and that is Pillar Point Bluffs and Quarry Park. We are in the final stages right now of submitting our recommendations to the Parks Department for the off-leash pilot program. Specifically, we have been discussing what's going on, what we want to have happen at Pillar Point Bluff. We've got all the trails identified in both Quarry and Pillar Point Bluff. I gave Glenn a document that you can see out at the end of this meeting here that has those trails identified. So with regard to the off-leash pilot, we've got 5 guidelines that we've developed that the entire group is in consensus on. And on our meeting on Monday, which we meet the first Monday of every month, but of course this was New Year, so we're meeting the second Monday this month. But the first Monday of every month, we're meeting on the 13th, 2 o'clock, Board of Supervisors, Chambers in Redwood City, to decide the final policy for the off-leash pilot program. I'll just real quickly tell you what the policy is right now. Off-leash dogs must be under voice and sight control. Dogs must remain on designated trails within earshot no more than 25 feet away from owner handler. Dog must be on leash in developed areas like a playground, picnic area, or a parking lot.
Neighborhoods too?
Well, this is in the actual, so once you're in the neighborhood, you're out of the park's jurisdiction. No more than 2 dogs off leash allowed per owner handler. And dogs must be under control. We have some criteria for what determines what control is. Now, the last thing that the group could not decide upon was a policy that stated dogs must be recalled and leashed when encountering others. And so a couple members of the committee could not agree to that because the whole idea of off-leash is that dogs are off-leash and that then maybe they meet each other. If at any time you encounter anybody else who needs to put your dog on the leash, then no 2 dogs will ever be off-leash together. And it kind of defeats the purpose. So we stalled out on the last meeting. We were supposed to have this recommendation done at the last meeting. We stalled out because we really, and if I could take 10 seconds to just say this, this is important to me because it is a reflection of what we need to do as a society. We need to get together on this issue. It's not an insolvable issue, and I'm committed to helping this community solve this issue in a way that everybody can abide. So we asked for renewed language on that, and this is what we will be considering next Monday, this Monday coming up, this revised statement. Instead of dogs must be recalled and leashed when encountering others, we're considering dogs must be under control at all times and leashed up whenever necessary for the safety and or comfort of other park owners or protection of sensitive species. The idea here is that gives some leeway, okay? If you're approaching someone with your dog off leash and that person calls out to you, I don't like dogs, I'm afraid of dogs, put your dog on leash, put your dog on the leash. That's the leeway there. However, if you're walking along and the person nods at you, if there's no problem, if the person even says, hey, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm gonna go over here, you don't have to leash up. And so that's what certain members of the committee were looking for. Some flexibility on that. Brandon, hey, sorry, I haven't seen you. I'm sorry. I see my friend Brandon, I haven't seen him in a while. So that's where we are. That's what we'll be discussing, and we'll be voting on that to try to get a consensus vote on Monday. And then from there, our recommendation will go to the Parks Department, Parks Commission, for their review next month, February 6th, I believe. They will be reviewing that. Then it will go to the Board of Supervisors from there. So that's where we are on that.
So we have, excuse me, so we have 2 speaker slips here. The first is Betsy Capel.
Come to the meeting on January 13th.
I actually have a couple of issues to talk about. The first one, I just wanted to say thank you to Supervisor for coming to this meeting. And thank you so much for the endless hours of volunteer time that the dog work group has devoted to try to resolve The dog work group have all endorsed our two local parks on the coast, Quarry Park and Blufftop Pillar Point Park, as the pilot parks for off-leash access. And I want to note that these two parks have historically always been off-leash, until at least the county took control. My fellow dog friends that I have worked to protect our local parks and to be good stewards of the land. And these parks have been a treasure to have in our backyard. And they promote a daily social connection for my fellow community neighbors. And it's great for our pets to be able to socialize and walk. We respect the parks and we want to see others enjoy it too. And please consider both these parks for the pilot program. Because once they really support the pump track. And I would really love to see a timely resolution on the dog ordinance as you're doing for the pump track. The second thing I wanted to talk about is about Airport Street. We've had a couple fatalities recently, and it's something that's really a big problem at nighttime because, for one thing, there's no lighting except at the entrance of the mobile home park. But at Cornell and Airport, there's no light at that intersection. There are no sidewalks, there's no bike lanes, and there are cars parked all along on both sides of the road. It's a 35-mile-per-hour zone, and the center bumps, reflectors are worn, gone, and there's no white reflective lines. So when you're driving at night, you have to look at the center line. And when oncoming traffic is coming towards you, you're blinded. So I really would like to see this problem addressed so we have no more deaths in the town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. We're doing a task force on Brenton, and we meet tomorrow. I'll bring that up tomorrow. So we'll take down the notes and we'll because we have the highway patrol and sheriff as part of the task force.
And what can I do?
You can send us a detailed email to Brave, over there, Brave Hunter.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker is Hillary Swery.
Very good. That's good. It's a hard one. Thank you. First of all, I'd also like to thank the dog work group. Many of us have gone over the hill to see some of those meetings, taking time off of work to see what's been going on in that. And the amount of work that they have put in on this is incredible. And those of us who live here, thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. Supervisor Horsley, thank you for being here tonight. And really for supporting the county parks and the work group. Again, cannot thank you enough for that. We're here to ask you, and the new parks director, Nicholas Calderon, to support the voice control dog walking at both Quarry Park and Pillar Point Harbor that we just heard about. Those are our historic off-leash dog walking sites. I live in Montera, 25 years in Montera, so I have GGNRA and El Rancho to deal with, but I also walk in Quarry, I walk on the bluffs. My dog is not under voice control, so will not be off-leash. But I love it when other dogs are off-leash because she loves those animals. So I just hope that you support this. The county parks work group has spent so much time on this issue. They have not taken their job lightly. The meeting that I went to, I was stunned at how deeply they talked about it and looked at the maps and were really examining it from all sides because they have representatives from environmental, from equestrian, as you know, from our dog groups, from mountain bikes, and from this community. So they're all trying to come together and fix this and give us a solution that we can all work with. So all we're asking is that you follow their lead. They've all endorsed both Quarry Park and Pillar Point Bluffs for this off-leash pilot sites. So we really hope that the Board of Supervisors, because we know that they do listen to you, so we're hoping that you'll support them.
I listen to Christine.
Yes!
We welcome the opportunity to work with you on these issues. So again, work group, thank you.
there's not enough money in the world to pay you for all the work you've done.
Like, I did not fill out a speaker slip. Can I do
did.
it?
I think I filled one out.
Oh, okay.
Do you have
Step
it?
up.
Am I next?
Yeah, you'll be next. Is there anybody else who wants to speak, you need to fill out a speaker's list, they should be out in the
They're
lobby.
green, they look like this. They're in that back room that it was hard to get to with all the kids when I arrived.
Should be on the wall.
Carlisle and Young and Moss Beach, I actually live in Seal Cove, so I didn't know the dog thing was gonna be happening tonight, but,
You should put your slip in. Pass your slip in.
She already did.
I did, you have it. Dan put it over there for me. Anyway, I wanna make it quick, but since you brought up the dogs, which I didn't plan to speak about, I assume you're talking about the Gene Lauer Trail when you say the, bluff in, what do they call, what'd you call them? Pillar Point Bluffs, that's where the Gene Lauer Trail is. So, I had knee surgery this year, and so, can I keep this?
Sure.
Okay, I'll see you maybe at the meeting. I live in Seal Cove, and up until my knee surgery, I used to walk my goats on the bluff trail. I know there's dogs out there off leash, and I've only had a few incidents. But I hate to say it, I know I see a lot of dog t-shirts, but there are the self-entitled dog owners that don't respect that you have a different breed of thing on a leash, and their dogs come running up, and you know, I had one guy tell me when his dog was barking and barking at my goats, and I said, shh. He goes, don't reprimand my dog. I was like, I'm not insulting your child, you know, I just wanted, my goats were very upset. So anyway, I'm not sure, I'll come to your meeting, Chris, and see what the voice control policy is, but, you know, generally I would say most dog owners are very considerate. They pick up their poo, they keep their dogs on a leash, or they're careful when they see you coming along with goats. But it's something that, you know, I was sort of happy for pedestrians that are afraid of dogs because of, you know, in the past, my confrontations and, you know, anyway. So that's just briefly what I wanted to talk about, mainly was Ocean Boulevard. I went to our Seal Cove neighborhood party. We have a holiday potluck, and somebody brought up the fact that 2 neighbors have broken legs on that street this year. And this is on the unimproved or county unmaintained portion, that in 1996 we brought up to...
You're speaking off the dog issue.
No, I'm not on the dog issue. My speaker slip says
That-
Ocean Boulevard, the
this part is
crosswalk.
just for the dog issue?
I'm off the dog issue.
I know, so if you wanted to come back to this.
No, I tagged the dog issue onto my speaker slip. I'm sorry. Well, stop interrupting then. I'm sorry. Ocean Boulevard, Mr. Horsley. You were around, I think, when Jim Porter took over. We used to have Rich Gordon, and he didn't want to get any money to repair Ocean Boulevard, so the county's decision at that time was to close off a portion of it. Now I've heard, incidental reports from our own neighborhood that 2 different neighbors have broken our elbows and legs on that path. And so I went and took pictures of it this weekend, and there were bicyclists and pedestrians using it. So it's not that, okay, it's closed to traffic, but there are still people using it. And originally the neighbors had suggested that you take off some of the big chunks of cement or slip seal or whatever it was, and just put a gravel path there so it'd be easier to walk. And you can maintain it when it gets unlevel. So that's what I want to bring up. I will write a letter about it too. The crosswalk in Moss Beach, very ill lit. Somebody else mentioned the lighting down on Airport Boulevard. It's terrible, but out on Highway 1, which is Caltrans lighting, in Moss Beach there is 1 Caltrans light pole. In Montero there's 5. So we need more lighting there. That's basically, I guess, up to you guys to request that from Caltrans. And then the main thing, you know, it would be nice if we had a Midcoast Community Center, because, you know, Half Moon Bay has theirs, but it's already gridlocked just to get down there. For people to go to the schools and get their kids at the library and go to Safeway. I would be willing to work with Nicholas Calderon to find a parcel maybe that's owned by the county already, and work on maybe using some Measure K funds for that. So I just wanted to see if you had any idea about it. I know, but
you know, they're talking about giving a ton of money to,
Let me respond to you, Michelle.
yeah. You know, you're giving a lot of money for the place up in Lost Beach Heights, and they'll have their own community center, but we still don't have one. Look at how many people tried to squeeze in this room tonight. Be nice to have a bigger meeting room.
Well, there's a couple of options, you know, one, the new school superintendent has some thoughts, and there is a parcel that we are in negotiation that might fit a bill for a community center. So we are aware of it, and we are looking at the potential site.
In the Midcoast. I'm not talking half a day. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Next up is Christy Corwin.
Hi, my name is Christine Corwin, and I'm with Coastside Dog of San Mateo County. I just want to thank all the dog owners for coming out tonight. This is an issue that's really important to us. It's the ability to walk our dogs in county parks and other public lands. I have served on the dog management committee and now dog work group for, I think we're going on our 4th year as a group. The first 3 were spent on policy, and now this past year we've been actually working on implementation. And you know, as Chris mentioned, the dog work group in terms of voice control dog walking has recommended Quarry Park, which is great, as well as the Pillar Point Bluff Top. So that would be all the trails along just the bluff top, and then all of the multi-use trails at Quarry Park, which is actually a decent number of trails. So I feel like right now the process has been, you know, going well. I'm happy where we are with it. You know, we still have to work out that last provision 6. I feel comfortable with, I definitely don't feel comfortable with the language that you have to leash up anytime you see anyone, because at the end of the day, that's not really voice control dog walking, and no other park district does it like that anywhere. So, but I think that the language that the work group is considering now is actually a really good compromise. We all want to be considerate, you know, it's just about being considerate out on the trails, like all user groups, you know, bicyclists, hikers, dog walkers, you know, we're all out there sharing the trails together, and we all just have to be considerate. So that's what this is about. And you know, the dog work group is wrapping up its recommendation in January, and we're really hoping that County Parks fully supports that recommendation, and that the Board of Supervisors supports the recommendation when they consider it in March. And I hope everyone here will go to that meeting in March, because it's really important that dog owners show up. So I also just want to thank Supervisor Horsley for supporting the dog work group and supporting County Parks on this. And I really hope that you do, you know, support allowing us to keep that historic access.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We now have 5 additional speaker slips, and these are on the agenda, which is public comment for items not on our agenda. We'll go through this as we move forward. I just want to tell my fellow council members that the second item on our agenda for MCC planning is deleted from the agenda today, so we'll use the time we have for the first item. Okay, the first up is David Seaton.
Hello, so David Seaton, I'm a member of GCSD. Thanks for coming out. You know, I was going to speak on the pump track in terms of, you know, I look at it, we're on the brink of World War III. You know, Prince Harry just disowned himself from the royal family, and we're mobilizing 10 county staff to take down a pump track within 24 hours of finding out about it. There's liability all over Quarry Park. There's hills that another speaker said he was part of building that are way more dangerous. I think if it's a liability issue, there's ways to reduce liability. I think with, you know, fencing it off, signs, everything else, but I think that you really got to look at it is more than just a little mound of dirt to these kids. This is their only hope. People like Chris Johnson have been selling the dream for his kids, that his kids are about to become teenagers. And this whole life has passed them by of him coming to board members. He's only doing it now for my young kids, which it's probably going to pass them by as well. And we finally have a little sliver of hope, and it's going to be knocked down within 24 hours. And I understand, I think it says more about our society than anything else, because we are in a litigious society. But I think it does show, you know, where we're at, that we're so disconnected from what county park staff should be focused on in terms of our taxpayer dollars are going towards demolishing things that the community has spoken with their wallets, with their time, with their energy, what they demand. And I think we don't need to do any more, that's as clear as day as what and so I think, look at it in terms of that, because it does mean a lot more than just the few minutes of fun. There's a lot of pride that goes into it. And I think we do need to mobilize that as a catalyst for how do we take people that are willing to contribute their own time and resources, take pride in something, maintain it, and turn that into something that we could save taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars through, the county coming in and just doing the final permitting, approval and other type of compliance things. So I think the other thing, I think it's clear with this meeting, we do need some type of Midcoast community center. I think I look at the fire department, how they moved on their own. The Harbor District, they're doing a community center. GCSD is talking about doing the community center. We're about to have 4 community centers, all micro centers, where we need the county to come together as a partner. I understand these agencies are tough to work with, but we do need, that cooperation. So, thank you.
Next up is Greg McGee's. Oh. And following that will be Tim Fuller.
How many minutes do I have left?
2.
Well, I practiced for 3. So I want to speak to you tonight about the lack of sustainability on our Midcoast and what it means to you, the residents and ratepayers and taxpayers. You're aware that the big wave development placed on an earthquake fault in a tsunami zone in the 14th worst fire evacuation location in the state has been approved. You should also be aware that the county has sponsored via non-recourse loans a development by Mid-Penn at Cypress Point, which would add hundreds of residents in a small area and potentially slow traffic to 23 miles an hour at all times via a series of roundabouts to cope with the massive and dangerous traffic congestion, which would result turning Highway 1 into a residential back road. But you're likely not aware of the burdens, risks, and costs to your public works infrastructure. The first effect you're going to feel if these population expansions are allowed is a reduction in your water security. The hydrologist from Ontario's water district reported that the mountain aquifer does not replenish during multiple years of drought. They have to cut back the water. If you use CCWD water, largely purchased from Hetchy Hetchy, you should be aware that SFPUC documents contained in the CCWD master plan detail a series of cutbacks in the event of climate change and multiple year droughts, which will reduce that source by over 50%. Yet the county wants to continue to add population. The second effect you'll feel is the stress to the sewer system. That system is already underfunded and taxed to the breaking point during severe wet weather events. During those events, sewage from the north is cut off at the sand plant because Halfmoon Bay needs to use 100% of the capacity. The sewage backs up 5 to 6 miles into expansion tanks at Portola and Montero until such time as peak water passes. Yet I'm aware of no assessment of the sewer burden by GCWD, which reflects the increased flows from hundreds of new residents and a commercial center on the intertie pipeline system, or on the sand plant, nor an analysis of the cost of expanding those capacities, nor any guarantee of indemnification of existing ratepayers from the cost of expansion and or from fines resulting from the next spills from overloading those systems. The third effect you'll feel is on fire security. The deputy fire marshal told me that Big Wave would require 600,000 gallons of fire storage, and I'm aware of no plans to build that fire storage, nor who would fund it in perpetuity. Further, as I shared with you all last fall, less than 1% of the hydrants are tested annually in CCWD and WSD. All right, well, so I will stop before finishing. I will merely say that Michelle Dragoni has agreed to publish the full text of my full write-up on the Coastal Buzz website. I will substantiate everything I am saying or was about to say in a series of follow-up documents, and you'll be hearing from us more about developments which only harm the residents on the coast.
Great, thank you. Next, followed by Karen Moore. Is Tim Fuller still here? Okay. Karen?
Hi, Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks for being here, Supervisor Horsley. And we had asked for this to be an agenda item, and I'm basically here We have sent a letter, and you can visit our website, resistensity.org, where we are very concerned that we found out that the San Mateo County Planning Commission is scheduled to consider the Mid-Penn out-of-scale housing project on January 22nd, in 2 weeks. And this is in direct conflict with the county's previous statement to the public, as evidenced even today on the website, that the next opportunity for public input will be when the project is formally brought before the Midcoast Community Council for their consideration and recommendation at a later date. Well, this next Midcoast Council will be canceled for this planning commission meeting. There are still so many unanswered questions about this project regarding traffic, environment, and road safety issues. And we've been tracking and presenting the community's concerns, steadily following on the process, and to keep the community informed. And we were advised in August by the county planner who's in charge of this project that the comprehensive traffic management plan would be released before the Mid-Penn project would be considered. And I think that's on the agenda, but still, that has not been released. That's going to need public comment and discussion. So, we are urging two things for Supervisor Horsley and for the MCC to, one, schedule a review of this project for the community to be involved. At a bigger place. At a bigger place. So the community can be involved. And then second, postpone this planning commission meeting. It is jumping ahead of any of the other designated meetings that were supposed to happen. And after the comprehensive traffic management plan is released and commitments are made. The community must be involved in this process, the community needs to be informed, and this process needs to be transparent.
We have Carla Young.
That was me. I already got it.
Judith? Yeah. Okay. Did you want to speak? Sure.
I have a prepared statement, but I might just, oh yes, I'm sorry. Ann Hoffman, I'm from Moss Beach, and I also am here to discuss the proposal up in Moss Beach, the Cypress Point. What concerns me is that there hasn't been a lot of discussion on safety, and it's been, I think, really clear to all of us residents as we have this power outage, due to fire safety. This is really a concern. If you have a project of this scale and you have all of these people trying to evacuate and you don't even have a light in the town, there's not even a traffic light. And there are very few first responders to even help residents get out in the case of a fire. And if the tunnel becomes closed because PG&E did not put in a backup generator, we could be...
It's not PG&E, it's Caltrans.
Caltrans. My apologies. Caltrans. So if there's a power failure and the tunnel becomes closed, we will all have to evacuate south. There is no way we can survive that if there is a wildfire. We will not be able to do this. We don't. And if you add hundreds of new residents into an area that can't even be evacuated with the people who are currently here, you're really adding a safety condition that I think is not acceptable. Also, the water system, that also runs on pumps, and everything is groundwater. And furthermore, it's owned by the homeowners of Montara and Moss Beach. We pay for the water system there, and where you want to build. If the power is down there, the only way to continue having water for the residents is if they get new generators, which they say they're purchasing, and to have the proper fuel brought in. Well, if there's fire, you can't bring in fuel, you can't run the pumps, there's no water. And, again, all of this falls onto the homeowners to be able to pay for and maintain and take care of the water system. So, thank you, and please just consider not changing the LCP, because the 40 houses on the coast per year should be maintained until you get the infrastructure in place and you can see what the impact of building would do. I do offer an alternative, and that is for the county to purchase the land and to lease it to people to build homes on. I don't see why not. You've already put in millions of dollars and given it to Midpenn. know, and they said that they would pay back if it doesn't, if
And
this
by the
doesn't
way,
get approved.
the PUD now calls for 140 units. The hearing only is to change it to from 140 down to 70.
But it
That's
changes it
all.
to 100% affordable, that's not what the LCP is, that's
Yes,
not the
yes, it
current
is.
LCP, it is,
Yes, yes, it is.
it's not
No, no,
100%.
no. That's exactly what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Len?
If you look at my slip, I had a second topic, and you can just give me a minute if you could.
1 minute, please.
1 minute at a time. Big groans from everyone, but hopefully last can talk about it. Moss Beach Crosswalk, Dawn, thank you. Thank you for saying something that to Caltrans that they needed a permit. Now they're digging in and saying, oh, well, blah. They are quoted in the paper, and their last thing is saying it was a one-day work order, but we got the thing from Kevin Mullen's office, and we did a one-day work order. I spoke to them twice, and they told me they did months in advance, they did engineering studies, and this was all. I'm sad about the pump track, I'm hopeful about the dog thing, I am furiously irate, head exploding over this. The amount of work that the county and the MCC has done on this, and for them to do that, if all it took for Caltrans, according to their latest story, to get this installed was like a customer service request or something from Kevin Mullen's office. Who is unaccountable in this is Kevin Mullen's office. This is where it starts. Get that office to issue a take it out customer service request and get it taken out in one day. I mean, I'm so furious about this. Thank you.
Just before you do that, that's not exactly what we want. We want them to apply for a CDP.
Yeah.
Right, and we want to see how many things that we could force them to do to actually make it safe.
Right, okay, so.
We did, well, actually, one of the things that he said was lighting. The lighting is something that we did. There was a kid that got hit there, and we moved that traffic or the light to light that particular intersection. And they use that as a justification for the crosswalk. But we do want to see if we can make them do some of the things that, you saw when it used to be on the MCC, some of the potential either islands or rapid flashing, something, but it's really unsafe now.
So 95.
Gives them a false idea that somebody's going to stop in a crosswalk, and they will not.
It's criminally unsafe, and 95% of my feeling and comment is make it safe. If that's what you're going to do with the CDP request, make it safe. But the other 5% is somebody in this whole operation was callous ignorant to the point of callous disregard, and has caused this to be there. And that person has not said one word of, oh, I made a mistake. Maybe we should have looked at it. I'm sorry. It's not good. And I will never be satisfied until that person makes some kind of public statement about their responsibility. As Kevin Mullen.
That's right. Why did he overstep you? It's your.
Thank you.
That's where this started.
My hair's been on fire over the same thing. How many meetings do we go to?
We're now moving forward. The next item is the consent agenda for the minutes of December 11th. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Yeah, some of us get up at 4 in the morning.
The minutes of December. Thanks for standing there. Yeah, you wait a minute.
Another follow-up.
Loose audience.
Okay.
Go ahead, it's okay, it's okay.
We normally do with MCC, it's kind of informal, and I've sort of taken it to kind of informal, that we usually do kind of a planning session that we do on a Saturday.
Right.
And oftentimes not very many people show up, but, so it's kind of wise that you did it at nighttime, especially, it was really smart of us to shut down this pump trap. To get all the people up here. But, so just give me some of the ideas of personal accomplishments, based on, we have this thing that we call this 2025 shared vision goal. One are healthy community. So in the Quarry Park, we have done a shaded fuel break project in partnership with CAL FIRE. That's to prevent wildland fires. We support residents that have been impacted by the Bay City Farms nursery closure with connection to health insurance, coverage, and needed health support. We even do things like pay rent in the event that they don't really have a means of continuing their rent, just so that they're not thrown into the street and we end up with more people who are homeless. We've got some requests for proposals for multicultural awareness programs to support coastside behavioral health clients and consumers and family members. And under a prosperous community, provided funding through Measure K for the new Abundant Grace facilities. That's the mayor of Happy Bay talked about that. King Tide events in Miramar in 2019. In progress is the Princeton land use and shoreline management plan, and you and I have talked about that. We have set aside a significant amount of money for the shoreline management plan. The plan Princeton is pretty much done. It will remain as a working waterfront area for the most part. Under the guise of livable community, the Surfers Beach Highway Improvement Project, roadway drainage improvement project, we repaved the northern end of Murata Road, and I know there was a question about what are we going to do about Murata Road in the long run. One of the things that the county did in conjunction with the cities is we formed a new agency called the Flood and Sea Level Rise, and we are working with city representatives and two county board of supervisors, me and Supervisor Dave Hunt, and our hope is to be able to leverage state and federal money to deal with the bayside flooding and coastside flooding. So one of the reasons that we make sure that one of the board members is from District 3 or my district, not necessarily because of me, but forevermore, anybody who represents the coast has to be on that flood and sea level rise agency, because that is really critically important to the whole coastline. We've also constructed storm drainage pipes on Avenue Granada, improving coverage of existing drainage systems. We reconstructed Madrid, Sonora, Seville Avenues, and El Granada. And there's a whole bunch of other things, and I got to tell you, well, with the Devil Slide Trail, you were part of that, as well as other people from MCC. We have a sea level rise policy that was adopted by the Board of Supervisors. The Fitzgerald Marine Reserve parking lot green infrastructure retrofit to treat stormwater. We enhanced the street sweeping to remove litter and pollutants were required by the State Water Resources Control Board to actually clean up our act to make sure that all that stuff doesn't end up in the ocean. The Half Moon Bay Library was built to LEED Platinum standards. Half of that funding, actually probably the majority of it, came from the county. We did sponsor the National Night Out for 2019. We had a partnership with the RCD, which is the Resource Conservation District, on public-private opportunities for environmental improvement, studies, analysis, and education throughout the coastline. Hosted a Veterans Resource Fair in Half Moon Bay, provide information and resources to veterans, and a whole bunch of other things, and I won't go through the whole list because your time is running short.
You can share this with us.
Okay, well, I'll leave that with you guys. But one of the things that, especially because of things that we hear about, like the issues of traffic and housing, it does require a larger community conversation. And one of the things that we have discovered with one of the projects I'm involved with is called Home for All. As you know, we get a lot of pressure from the state of California for all communities to find affordable housing. I mean, that's a major issue for the entire state. One of the reasons that I believe, and I think it's pretty well documented, so many people who are homeless and living in RVs is because there isn't affordable housing. And while one might think that workforce housing isn't needed on coastside, it's simply not true. People who provide services for you and the community need to have some place to live, and it's darn unaffordable to live here now. So in any case, that's part of it. We also recognize that anytime we talk about any kind of a development, whether it's workforce housing or for development of disabled people, it does talk about or add to congestion on the highways, and we recognize that is a major issue. So from Home for All, we've had these community conversations with a whole variety of different communities, from Happy Bay to Burlingame to Portola Valley, having people talk about what's important in their community. And we found a great deal of success that people start listening to each other instead of hollering and yelling at each other. Which brings me to my feeling about following up with the CTMP is I'm tired of having people yell and scream at me because of, I don't like roundabouts, or I don't like traffic lights, or do something about this traffic, or so, okay, let's see if we can work together. And part of that is we decided, or I decided with planning, can't we talk about the CTMP as part of a broader conversation? And so we have some consultants who have done really a fabulous job. Susan Clark is from Common Knowledge, is here tonight, and she's a great facilitator. And of course, you all know Joe Leclerc. You may not know, Greg Hunter is one of my new aides, and Peggy Jensen is Deputy County Manager. So they're going to talk about, I guess it was my idea about how do we engage the community. There's so many problems on the coast side that the solution doesn't lie with one person or one agency. It relies on really all of us working collaboratively together. So with that, I'm going to introduce them already. I have Susan Clark. Are you ready to talk about our project? Or is it Peggy? Or is it Joe? Yeah, I know it's not Greg.
Joe, you want the CTMP itself introduced by Joe first?
Yeah, let me
Sure.
just,
Why don't we do that?
let me just make a very quick announcement. Thank you all for coming tonight, and we have been working diligently on completing Connect the Coast Side, the Comprehensive Transportation Management Plan. It's really an important piece of the sort of solutions that we need for addressing existing conditions on the coast. I mean, we hear you that it's very difficult to move around, and we also are getting pressure from the Coastal Commission to make sure that people who want to visit the coast can get here, find a place to park, and enjoy the beach. So we understand, there's a number of users and needs that need to be addressed. And we also know that there will be development in the future, and we need to accommodate that as well. But the important thing is to try and grapple with the current conditions that we face. And so we have copies, I don't know if there are any left, in the back here of the executive summary of the Connect the Coast Side. So this is chapter 1. A week from today, we are going to publish what's called the public working draft of Connect the Coast Side. That will be the beginning of a long conversation with the community about what this plan should contain, and how we implement it, and it will be, as Supervisor Horsley said, part of a broader conversation of solving issues on the coast side, housing, traffic, and safety, and other considerations that the community wants us to address. So I welcome you to read this introductory chapter to the plan. It'll give you a sense of where we're headed with it, and in a week's time, this will be bolted on to 5 other chapters that will lay out our entire vision, preliminary vision, for how to address the mobility needs of the community now and into the future. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but that was the announcement that I wanted to make. Yes?
Several years ago, I was taking part of this.
Actually, I'm sorry.
We're now into the regular agenda part, so the first round of questions would come from the council.
Very good.
This
Thank
is
you. That was
include
all
the
I had.
coastal trail going north, that's all.
Yeah, and just to, so the comprehensive transportation management plan, or Connect the Coast Side, includes a variety of recommendations for pedestrian, transit, bicycle. Those are the primary recommendations, and some roadway improvements, as well as some land use controls. So those are the bones of what's in Connect the Coast Side.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
if you could stay up, I think, so we're going to have first questions from the council. I'll start on my right with Barbara.
Nothing yet, because I haven't had a chance to go through it.
Okay. So just to be clear, this sort of is the teaser, if you will, to give a summary. The document itself is available next Wednesday.
That's correct.
And then from that, we'll begin processes of review, which will be established.
Yes, and Susan will explain some of the sort of broad approaches that we have in mind for engaging the community on this.
Okay, thank you. Michelle?
And no comment. Same here.
Yes, I have a comment that, improving traffic flow. I come up Highway 1 regularly, and we all know about the backup at Frenchman Street. And I started taking closer looks at it, and I realized that a lot of times, they have the wonderful neighborhood of Frenchman Street right there. People are, crossing, taking their dog, get home, take the dog for a walk, back and forth, the trail. So when people hit the button, the light turns red for Highway 1 for about 26 seconds or so. And when that happens again and again, that's the thing that really causes a lot of that. Now, the solution to that would be to have free passing underpass for pedestrians. That way, pedestrians can cross the road and there's no traffic that have to stop. So I'm not seeing anything in here. I mean, we want to improve traffic flow. Here's a solution that is viable, and I think that we really want to improve traffic flow. We should start considering this.
Well, yeah, that's a really good point. I think Frenchman's Creek is that signal's in the city of Half Moon Bay.
Yes.
So we wouldn't necessarily have control over that, but the CTMP or Connect the Coast side is intended to be a collaborative effort with the city of Half Moon Bay. So that's a recommendation that we can pass along to Half Moon Bay, whether they prioritize that as an investment that they want to pursue. That's not necessarily something we control, but
another thing pointing out though is we don't want to duplicate what's happening there in Midcoast with other.
Right. Well, again, we will have those conversations about how we provide safe pedestrian crossings, as was just discussed by several tonight, and maintain traffic flow. There's a tension between those two things, and we have to figure out a way to solve them both.
One of the reasons that traffic light was put there is because of pedestrian accidents. And the other things you do have a residential community, and they have to get onto the freeway or onto the expressway, which is actually what's called an expressway. So when we tried to reduce the speed limit on that, we couldn't do it because it's an expressway. So it is very dangerous making left-hand turns onto that roadway without that traffic light. Now, you could do with the roundabout, which actually is, you could make safer crossings, and you also could make the intersection safer.
I'm not advocating for removal of those traffic lights.
Yeah, I understand. Okay.
Those eucalyptus trees could be trimmed too.
So we're going into common knowledge to talk about their views on process, but if there are questions from the audience on what Joe just said.
Are you with San Mateo County or are you with Common Knowledge?
Yes, I'm planning manager with San Mateo County Department of Planning and Building.
And
My name's Joe LeClaire.
Okay, these are just quick ones, we'll just take them. Go ahead, Karen.
Just two questions. Is this available online right now?
It will be tomorrow morning.
And what would be the website?
It's the,
it's on here, right?
it is.
We'll also make sure we get links up on the MCC website.
Yeah, the planning and building website, we just finished
Oh,
this
okay.
afternoon, so, it'll be available on the website tomorrow morning.
And then my second question is, you have private sources here. Is there going to be, who's in charge of the funding for these and the costs?
Well, there'll be costs and potential funding sources for each project. So, none of the projects that are identified in there so far are funded, ready to build tomorrow. So, and we will lay out, and do lay out in the implementation chapter, what that process looks like from sort of start to finish to go from, here's a project we want to build, and how long does it take to secure the funding and get permits and do the environmental work to build it.
I would be interested in seeing, as part of your supporting documentation, how a roundabout allows evacuation in the event of natural disasters in a timely fashion. I would also be interested in seeing how pedestrian crossing is safe and how the 23 miles an hour that you have to slow down to allows Highway 1 to remain an expressway.
Yes, similar to that. Is there any consideration of evacuation in the study? Because I don't believe it's part of anything that I've read about it, so, and with the new fire danger that has made everybody very aware, as well as the issue with power being shut off now and then. The fact that roundabouts, at least the one that was designed here for MCC, showed that for a 2-lane roundabout, you know, the speed through it was limited by the diameter, and that speed would be 23 miles. And that really kind of scares us to death.
Well, safety is an important part of the overall plan. In an evacuation scenario that I've seen in this country, nobody's going 23 miles an hour. People are generally, driving much slower than that because the road is jammed. And so I don't think the roundabout is necessarily going to be a constraint in a situation where the entire community is trying to evacuate.
And my question is just,
Let me make a comment.
let me finish.
No.
My question is, will safety concerns regarding like natural disasters be considered in this? Because I don't believe that that's part of the scope.
It wasn't initially, but it will be. And, yeah. Thank you.
I got a quick question. I'm sorry, what I want to do to frame next is have common knowledge speak of their process, and then those speakers will be available here for further questions.
Good evening. My name is Susan Clark, and I have been getting to know the Midcoast community over the past couple of months, and it's pretty exciting to see the level of engagement. My assignment here will disappoint those of you who think I'm here to talk about a specific policy proposal. I had a different kind of assignment. And Len, are you my clicker? Is that great? So Common Knowledge is a different kind of consulting firm. We help communities listen together and learn together to address shared goals. We specialize in nonpartisan education where you want an engagement effort that's inclusive of the whole community across different education levels, income levels, and any other kind of diversity. You have a situation where it's really important that people are informed in their participation and you're working on an issue that needs sustained engagement over time. So we're not brought in to be a consultant to say, let's pass this or pass that. We come into a situation, as Supervisor Horsley said, where there is a complex, multidimensional issue where there's no one agency, no one program that's going to get you the results you want. You got a lot of players and a lot of programs, and it's an issue where the community, how they choose to behave in their daily lives is part of the outcome. So we work on issues like housing, transportation, healthcare. Right? So we're a different kind of animal. So, but we've been working with different county departments for the past 3 years, especially on the project of Home for All, and we had great experience in Pacifica to the north of you, and with the city of Half Moon Bay to the south of you. But we've been really excited about the opportunity to be invited in to work more about the Midcoast. I'll take the next slide. So the assignment was a little bit broad on purpose to identify community information needs and some community engagement opportunities around multiple planning issues. You have many planning issues facing the Midcoast and the coast side. Next. So we do this a little bit differently. When we come in, we make sure we start with communities' perspectives, plural. It's not one side, other side. No one person can say, I know everything about the community, right? You have a very interesting special community here with a lot of perspectives. So what's the community's perspectives? What are the information needs? Not only of the people like you who have invested in learning about policy issues, which is great, but you have a lot of other people in the community who don't know the policy issues as well, but they have perspectives that might be helpful, and also working with partners, working through networks. So it's been exciting to see the level of networks engaged here tonight as one example of the Midcoast. So, but those practices informed what we did. So what we've done so far, this is qualitative research. We had the opportunity to interview 18 local leaders. I've had the pleasure of speaking with some of you myself directly. My colleagues William Cooley and Nicole Nedich conducted some in-depth interviews. And then we're preliminary findings, and then we're going to invite your partnership, the MCC, and then everybody here tonight in helping us push this further out. So let's talk about what we're going to do tonight, and I appreciate it's already been a long evening. So the next slide. I'm here to share some preliminary findings, very preliminary. You can see how they land with your understanding of this community that you care about so much. If we have time and you have energy, we're going to discuss the priority audiences that you want to make sure are engaged in these bigger discussions. And in this discussion or in future discussions, develop some strategies for actually collaborating. Next. So in these interviews, what did we cover? We covered connection to the coast side, how you've been here, how you experience it, what you value about the community, what are top of mind priority issues. We started open-ended so we could hear the issues that were top of mind for folks, the challenges you see in the Midcoast, and then what's working well here, information channels and information needs. And I'd invite anybody who was interviewed, if they just want to say, did that represent what happened? Did I fairly capture that? Okay, great. I'm going to do it fast, but just chime in if you think I didn't capture it. But when you always go to summarize, you're like, ah. So the preliminary findings. This is going to be very high level. We have we promised everybody that we interviewed we would not say Barbara Dye said so and so. But we, really have a rich texture of additional information. But at a high level, no surprise. What do you love about this community? The natural beauty, the beaches, the environment, the welcoming, friendly neighbors. We saw this caring about social connections, vividly here tonight. Well, you said you like that. How you help each other, especially in times of need, outdoor recreation. And that in the coast side, you have people of diverse occupations and interests, and you like the fact that it's not a homogenous group. Next. Priority issues in terms of things that you want to be working on or see improved. Top for everybody was transportation, mobility, and safety emergency services. Both right at the top of the list. Of course, the recent power shutoffs and tunnel closure made that top of mind, but those seem to be very vivid issues. Housing, jobs economy, education, access to health services, environmental sustainability, and recreation and coastal access. I want to point out that these are from these local leaders who I think have good antennae into the community, but they were not representative of the cross-section of communities. So we would not say, take that listing, to the bank. It'll be enhanced and verified and improved with more outreach. So I think we went backwards. Can we go to, yeah, great. Okay, so next.
Not a very good clicker.
No, you loaded it. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So challenges facing the Midcoast. What was pointed out by the people we spoke with is you're going to hear some things you've already heard tonight, and you may know these well, but I'm just reflecting back. The multiple overlapping jurisdictions, diffuse responsibility at the county, state, regional, micro, local, and also that many residents don't even know, which jurisdiction they're in. Am I here? Half of them don't even know. No central body or place for sustained discussion of complex issues. Yes, the Midcoast Community Council, you are it, and yet people didn't feel that it, as currently configured or how you're doing it, didn't really, but
They're advisory, they have a cloud.
well, then that's the supervisor. Right, so just reporting what I heard.
But a culture where residents appear to organize at times politically against something more than for something. This body is having a 20-year anniversary, and my understanding is your inauguration was by organizing against something. So that, but your mission has evolved.
Organizing for something, primarily, actually.
Well, thank you. So see, this could be that there may be misperceptions, and you can change the story of how the community talks about itself. From a planning standpoint, if you have Joe Leclerc's job, your planning needs to be done within the constraints of the local coastal program, which is a whole other layer of those of you who may be familiar with it. Distance to services, and in that distance to services, some of the disconnect that we heard a little bit mentioned tonight. So those are some of the challenges. We also heard a lot about strengths. And so this culture of people helping each other, the wanting to come together, in terms of hands-on help, also philanthropic help, and so forth. A lot of shared values and interests. Again, many of the things that you heard people get passionate about tonight: the environment, safety, increasing mobility, family-friendly, outdoor recreation, multi-generational. The people we spoke with love their community and seem to have a lot of shared passion about it. Of what's important here. Can I just let me do that last bullet point? Well, actually, you already saw it. You know, the examples of people working together to make things happen. So it's not only the, oops, here. Sorry, Lynn. Thank you. Now, what we heard is that there was an appetite to better understand the needs of the whole community. People concerned that maybe there's a subset of the community that's active and coming forward to express their needs, and there may be others who also care about the community and not included in the conversation. An interest in really getting, we heard it tonight, shared priorities, engaging in dialogue, figuring out how to collaborate. And everybody we spoke with, said, as you move forward, yeah, I'd like to help you make sure you have that more extensive outreach. The hopes for the future. This was not a broad visioning exercise, but we've heard some things jump out. You've heard tonight a real interest in having a central gathering place and space. Community serving businesses and services, wanting to make sure that you keep that local flavor here. Keeping the coastline accessible, wanting to be able to plan for the future together. What was interesting is people are very involved in caring, but when we asked, what is your vision for the future? We didn't hear that people had that chance to have that conversation, the future conversation together. There had been more conversations about reacting to things together. And a real keen interest in more innovation and collaboration. Public-private partnerships, different ways of coming together and using the obvious intelligence, heart, and goodwill of the community in more creative ways. Where are people getting their information? Again, this was not a quantitative survey, but I've highlighted that word of mouth, Half Moon Bay Review, and Nextdoor got the most. And then over there, the Midcoast Community Council website also got a nod, not at the same volume as the others, but once an issue got on people's radar screen, the MCC website was seen as a trusted resource to go get more information. But that was for the people sort of in the know. Next. What kinds of information did the people we speak with think that the community members needed? They needed to understand better about their local government. As I said, they may not be aware in their districts, what districts they're in, who makes decisions. We've talked about mobility, a fair amount of, not understanding the different overlapping responsibilities on that. Some basics about who lives here, works here, and visits, and understanding the role of the visitors in the local economy. And the transportation planning, the context around what's even feasible, what are the constraints, and so forth. Your geography, your land use, is sort of the guidelines that you have to work with within the Coastal Act. And then people were keen to make sure that folks knew about things that they could personally do or individually collectively to address community needs. So that was sort of the information set that people were interested in. So I think I'm going to stop there. I had a small part about checking in with the the MCC about the audiences and topics for going to the next step, but I just thought I might pause and see, was there anything surprising in those very preliminary high-level findings? No, no, all right. Great, so who would be priority audiences for education that meet some of the interests we heard in the interviews next? We at Common Knowledge in our work here with the county, we've also worked in the county of Marin, county of Sonoma, which also have western coasts and coastal communities. And so in our projects around Northern California with counties and cities, we find it really helps to be very, very, very intentional about understanding that people familiar with local policy issues may take in information and want to engage in information differently than people who care about the community but are less familiar with local policy process. And so we would suggest that there those two channels, and the audiences, and the one on the right is bigger than the one on the left. Next. So in the interviews, these were the priority audiences you lifted up as saying people we'd also like to engage. The folks who aren't engaged right now. The parents and families. We saw some of them here today. What other issues could they get engaged in? Now, they know where you are now. Younger residents, older residents, Spanish-speaking community members, local business owners, and employees, the people who work here. And they may have a very different perspective than folks who work elsewhere. And then how would you reach these audiences? And so the next slide is the types of community partners. They're the trusted channel and so forth. And again, we're not talking about just someone handing a postcard to say, come on down to a meeting. It's actually the two-way exchange. So the local businesses, nonprofits, social service organizations, the library, senior organizations, schools, parent groups, faith-based organizations, housing communities, recreational environmental groups. Fairly straightforward list of categories, but these were the types of partners that you identified. And we did speak with the school superintendent and other, just tried to make sure that we were covering some of the waterfront. Now, in terms of a topic, transportation and mobility was at the top. It's not a coincidence that the county invited us in concurrent with the fact that the Connect the Coastside plan was coming. But our assignment was not just Connect the Coastside, because we think the community members that you'd like to reach may not understand a plan that is a single slice of, well, it's some of transportation, but not all of transportation. It's got some land use, but it's not all land use. And instead, think about having the community be able to, as the supervisor said, have a larger conversation about transportation projects. In November, the Office of Sustainability is active, and we work with the Office of Sustainability on other projects. They came and did the active transportation. In December, you had Reimagine Samtrans come. Now you had Joe give an announcement about Connect the Coastside. If you were a community member who's not involved, you're not gonna be able to string these things together, right? You might just be like, how do I get around? I'm interested in the walking part, the biking part, the driving part, the getting everybody out of their cars part. So we would consider, our recommendation is that you invite people into a conversation about mobility that lets them kind of choose which of those, and or identify a conversation that isn't happening through different channels. And in doing that, we also find it really helps if you invite it in a way where the community has a role. Where am I in this picture? What can I do? Besides tracking the policy process. So the conversation that we'd like to have with you as much as you'd like tonight and continue in the future is, as we move into this next phase, the local networks that you have, and that we saw some tonight, and I know there are others, who would they help you reach out to it? What networks would we want to engage in and have the MCC be sort of a multiplier? And you have the website. Post information, some more basic level information, as well as the types of quality information people have come to trust and look for on your site. And then we would like to invite you to, or on behalf of the county, I would recommend to you and the county that you, perhaps with other partners, help plan and host some community educational events, perhaps with this topic of mobility as the first one. members in the outreach. I can sit down or I can stand if you have questions.
Well, so
But I
first,
want to make sure it's a discussion. I would leave the slide up about the ask, the linking the information channel to code review, or if you can hold those thoughts, that's fine.
so there seem to be two aspects of where you go now. One is your presentation gave an overall framework and questions about the process. The other was whether to begin to engage in the process itself for those distinct paths forward. When you talk about beginning to do it, that is, rather than clarify what you said, hearing a discussion with us and looking at that last slide.
So would the, and so perhaps, I don't know the protocols here, should it be the supervisor, should it be, county staff, but, you know, is the MCC interested in jointly planning, you know, some community education and outreach around mobility?
I'm interested. At least some of us are, obviously we've not discussed it in that particular context.
So, why don't we, well, what we'd like to do first thing is just go around and give each council member a chance to speak, and then give the audience as well a chance to ask questions about it. So this time, I'll start on my left with Dan.
Well, it's an interesting concept, basically, you know, using tools to really get the pulse of the community. Okay. I am concerned that it, you know, is completely transparent and that, you know, that everybody can, there are, you know, not any leading questions, and everybody can hear completely the questions and the full answers from community members to really compare, because that's what a lot of people, we all know a lot of people, you know, they make their judgments, a lot of things based on, you know, talking with friends. So all the friends, when you go some way direction, then some people tend to follow. So it's very important that it's all in the open and fair. And yeah, I think it's a good direction.
Yeah, it seems like really great goals, and you already have like a great starting point with all the information that you have. Given kind of the broad strokes of some of the findings that you had from the experience like Pacifica or Half Moon Bay, what were some of the ways to kind of tease out some tangible outcomes or, you know, impact of this process?
Do you want to go around and let them?
You can respond to the.
Great. So, we could, and make available to you examples of the work done with Home for All. So we have some very concrete examples, so we'd be informed by that, but we're not coming in and saying, well, this is the model. We would co-design it for you and your community. But an example is, as you alluded to, it's not asking people in one conversation or one meeting to go from, I'm just learning an issue and boom, I'm gonna have a point of view. We have a concept about phased learning, and this is part of, you know, understanding if someone's new, it's gonna take them a little while. And another thing is that a really powerful part of the process, we would have dialogues, as one example, in Pacific and Half Moon Bay, and Half Moon Bay, the planning commission co-hosted with the community and really diverse residents, and we had, you know, 12 tables of 8 people around, and you're sitting next to someone you wouldn't normally interact with, right? And so that's one of the most powerful things about listening and learning together, is that you're really taking advantage of the diversity in the community. So you're not just sitting next to your neighbor, you're not just sitting next to your book club buddy or whoever. You are really learning from each other. And it really helps the community get a shared sense of where they are. And then there are some basic information about the issues, but it's understanding that people need a little time to digest that. And then what we find is people self-select. And so there may be people who are newer to it, like, oh, I think I do want to go deeper on this plan or that plan. And they get to choose which route, instead of saying, I really care about this issue and the only plan out there is this, and it may actually not cover the part of the issue you care about, right? So it's really, you know, giving people the landscape of how to get involved. Does that help?
Yeah.
Can I also point out that one of the reasons we're trying to do this is that oftentimes people think it's us, the county, doing this to us. For example, people talk about roundabouts. Roundabouts didn't come from us, they came from you. They came from the community. So it wasn't, so in other words, people now project and think, oh, I came up with it, or the county came up with it. It didn't come up with it. It came up with the community needs that you had. So in any case, the idea is to push this stuff into, more of a community dialogue so that the broader community understands that it's not us doing something to them.
And thank you, Supervisor, for bringing that up. In the case of these examples in Half Bay and Pacifica and other cities, when the community's talking, the council members and the electeds and the commissioners are not at the table. They're not up at the front answering questions. They're actually strolling and listening. So they get to hear the community grapple with the trade-offs. Because there aren't, if there was the answers on these, it's like, we would have all just done it on our own. So there's trade-offs. So who better to make the trade-offs than the community together, as long as you have a really good representative cross-section, and they've got some good basic information to start with. And so that's the general model, and then there's just lots of ways to execute it.
Michelle?
So thank you for what you're doing. I think it's great work. I know that so far it's been qualitative research, and some of the things you're talking about in the future are qualitative as well. Is there a plan to do any quantitative research such as surveys as part of the study?
Well, funny you should mention that. In the different jurisdictions that we partner with Home for All, some chose to do surveys. So some did and some didn't. So that would be an example. If we, you just saying, you could delegate a subcommittee who works on this, and then they could say, yeah, no, we'd like to have a survey here, and so forth and so on. But the survey would help sort of inform more about the information people need and where they're going, not jumping to thumbs up or thumbs down on a thing. The survey usually is developmental and saying, how are we finding, or sometimes it's on that after you've done it. So it just suits your purposes and time.
Got it. I'll pass at this point, come back last.
So I've got a number of things I'll try and be brief about. So as I'm sure you're aware, but a lot of people watching this video and perhaps some people in the room aren't aware, we have no staff and almost no budget. So everything we do is volunteer. That means that it's very hard to do any form of outreach or joint efforts or anything else. We're all involved in various issues, but it takes money. So we'll be looking to the county to help with that. In the years I've been on the council, we've had maybe 5 issues like the one tonight, where all of a sudden some issue happens, the community turns out in force. Often it's an issue, tonight was not an example of that, that has been going on for many, many, many months, sometimes even years, with massive outreach attempts by the county and us and newspapers, and yet the word will somehow go through some chain through the neighborhood, and all of a sudden people will turn out and go, I've never heard anything about this. And every time we say, well, how could we have reached you? Pretty much the only things that come up are the things we're already doing, social media. Occasionally people say, oh, you should mail out a postcard to everybody. But most of us have also watched people in the post office just throw things away without even looking at them. So even that doesn't work. So it does take a lot of different things. It does take some community interest to start one of those chains going. And then even then you're reaching a specific community. We have struggled with outreach on this council since the day it was formed, actually for years before it was formed. And it's an ongoing issue.
May I?
Sure. I'll stop there for a moment.
No, I love that you brought that up because that is such a real challenge. And so why might this be different? You might be asking people not to come to a policy discussion, an official government body. you would be inviting them to come to a different kind of conversation. And the first thing isn't even come to a room with all these people. You might be doing pop-ups, you might be going to people's meetings, you might be riding buses to talk to the folks on it. You know, so not you, because you don't have time, but you have, or you might, if you want to, do some of that. So there would be an array of pop-ups, intercepts, and outreach, but we wouldn't have even recommended this if we hadn't heard so many community connectors or nodes say, but I'd be willing to help. And so we already have those initial offers of help, and if you use your networks and ask, we think it's possible. But you're absolutely right, it's not snap your fingers, it is the patient work of using the community connectors, and that's another part of our trainings and so forth, is how do you find those nodes, and it's not inviting them to come to a policy discussion. It just, for some people, that, you know, there are other ways to engage people. A couple questions here, any conversation, and then before you know it, they come to this other conversation where if the county is partnering, they will make sure there's food, which also helps.
It does, and we've all seen that.
Please.
So, I'd like to add a couple things and address both of your questions briefly. The first one was about resources. San Mateo County, through through the support of the supervisors, has worked with 10 different cities in this type of model. And we felt, and we have provided staff support, cities have provided their own support. But when we spoke with Supervisor Horsley, and he expressed interest in applying the work that we've done here and the success that Susan and her team have had, we committed as a county to bring staff to help you. So we have funded Susan and her team's funding. We have a staff of about 4 folks who actually been working with Susan on some of the initial interviews, and we have other people who will be stepping in. So we are very committed to helping you and making this successful and putting the resources forward. The other thing that I'd like to mention regarding outreach, every community that we worked with has said, no one ever comes, we always see the same 20 people at every meeting. We always hear that nobody knows about this project that's been going on for years. What I can tell you is that through what we've learned from Susan about doing outreach in new ways and working with those different networks and reaching out to those groups that were on her PowerPoint, is that in most of the community meetings we've held, over half of the attendees have been people that have never gone to a public meeting before. So the types of things that we've learned from Susan and have practiced in these other communities have generated new attendees and gotten to the people to participate in ways they haven't before. We hope that's something that we would like to help us continue to work on here on the coast side, because we'd be happy to work with you on that.
Great. Okay, yeah, that's great news, and I will say to Susan, most of the other people didn't know this, a lot of these issues have not been single policy issues. They've been major ongoing educational and public involvement things. So I'll pass them.
Certainly agree with a lot of what Dave just said. I think this is exciting. I think it's a little vague as to where it's going now. But I think it's exciting that effort is being made to look at the whole community and where it's going and what we need and what we should do. One of the things that I tried to do in the past year was to create some synergy. The series of 3 meetings that we had on emergency issues brought in people from multiple different agencies, and I think the synergy of having them all come in and talk with each other as well as with us really did have some positive outcome. I like the idea of, tried a couple of times, I'd really like to do a lot more of it, of having 2 or 3 presenters come into a meeting on the same general theme, but people that don't normally talk to each other, and just getting that moving, and at the same time as the rest of us are getting educated around those issues. So I really like that whole concept. I have gone through several of these table meetings, and I don't like them. I feel they are kind of artificial. People are constrained. There's questions you have to answer, which seems to limit what you're really talking about. There seems to often be an agenda that people are being led to adopt. So I'm hoping that isn't what this ends up being. I would like to see something a little more organic and as I say, synergistic.
Well, and I think the organic maybe goes back to the vague. We're not coming in saying you have to use, the exact, that you would be this, we would build on what's worked for you in the past. But I will say, the part about dialogue at tables, we need to respect different learning styles. So some people like to learn by reading things, and some people can only wrap their heads around these complex issues by talking with others. And so the whole kind of outreach plan can accommodate those different ways of doing it.
I don't object to people talking with others, it's just, I almost like agree with Dan that it has to be respectful of what's really coming from the community and not somebody else's wishes for what will be coming from the community.
It won't work unless it's exactly the way you're talking about it. It has to be a totally honest conversation, which is where people can talk about their concerns around the general topic. And so we're on the same page about that.
I'm curious as to how you did this down here on the Midcoast. I hadn't heard anything about this, so
It was just a very informal, it wasn't a, here's an announcement, sign up to get interviewed.
I'm not asking, I'm just saying,
But
what did you do? What did you do?
How did you pick the people? Why don't we?
So we realized that we wanted to get started quickly.
I'm sorry.
So we realized we wanted to get started interviewing people quickly. So we met with the supervisor and his staff and put together a list of folks. We started with a number of people on the council who were interviewed, and then we identified other folks. What I want you to, the important thing is that it was the start. It is only the beginning of that, and there will be another series of interviews, and then ideally, we will be using outreach to school groups or parent groups or other folks to bring from more people in a less one-on-one way and more around these table discussions where people listen to one another and we listen to them.
Okay, so again, how did you do it? Did you sit down with people? Did you
Oh,
call them? Did you?
Oh, yeah, I thought you were
how they were selected. No, it was, Susan conducted the interviews, and other folks with Susan, and it was a personal conversation, one-on-one.
How many people?
On the slide, it said 18. So,
18 people.
Yeah. So, you're right, 18 people is a small number, but we wanted to just talk enough to see is there enough of a there to have then another level where there would be, planning discussions where anybody who's interested can have a role in this going forward.
And did that happen?
That's the next step.
That's the next step.
That's if you all want to partner, with the county, then that is the next step. So that's the invitation.
So I'm just confused as to, we're gonna be part of this, or what, do we vote on it, or what do we?
Like Claire said. Are you with the county or are you with Berkshire?
Should you introduce?
My name's Peggy Jensen, I'm Deputy County Manager.
You're with the county.
I'm with the county, and I'm overseeing this project, and I'm with all the 10 cities that have done this type of work. I think the question goes back to what's next, just was on Susan's last slide, and it's a discussion that you all can have around, is this something you want to participate in?
Right, so then I think that's ultimately the discussion the council wants to have today, but I did want to give everybody a chance to ask questions, to clarify. I'm passing right now, but I'm going out to the audience now, but I would like, if you present, please ask a particular question, and then let Susan stay out there.
Okay.
So she can respond.
And or Peggy or anybody else.
Okay. No, we're not going to do this with a speaker, so I'll just call you up to go up there, but please, when you go up, ask a question, another responder will go to another person and keep going. So, Sid, you're anxious to go first, go for it.
Carlisle Young, Moss Beach. It did seem very admirable, your project or presentation. However, I'm one of the community members that does attend a lot of the public meetings and puts in the time to put in my input. However, my frustration is, and I think there'll be a lot of members, including Dan, who know that the wheels of change move slowly. And even though we discuss issues time after time, the traffic, the gridlock, I went to the Highway 1 mobility study for Moss Beach and Montero. I went to the Connect the Coast side. I went to the Plan Princeton They separated us by tables, had us put up little tasty notes on boards. None of it has come to fruition yet, it's been years, but yet we see this sudden crosswalk come out in Moss Beach, just boom, after all the community input. So my point is, the public meetings and the outcomes never seem to come, or else very slowly. So I'm not really sure how you can get that to speed up, because that's the main frustration. And what Don said about why is the county doing this, Don, I'll answer that. I don't know if we feel like you guys are doing it to us, but we don't seem to ever have any big opportunity other than to express our opposition at these kind of meetings, to really put input into, do we really need a 71-unit project up there in Moss Beach Heights that's going to completely snarl our traffic here? Or yeah, let's plan Princeton, but all of a sudden we never get any feedback after we've been doing meetings. And Half Moon Bay wants to put in 2 big hotels. That's just going to bring more traffic. So we do need evacuation plan. That's it.
Okay, I have a question from back there.
Hi, I'm Jeff Warren, El Granada. This is my very first MCC meeting, and I've lived here over 20 years, so finally happy to be here. I did attend, just by chance, the Connect the Coastside meeting. We were having a scout troop meeting, and I can say it was very professional, very well done. And again, as I guess I would fully encourage you to take part in this. I like what you're talking about, and just get the word out. Right, and I guess my only other piece of advice I'd ask for is, if you do accept it and you can move forward and it's funded, why not? Pick one thing, right, that we can work on and get done, right? Now, let's not go big, just one thing, one little piece at a time, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Do you want me to go up there, Len?
Yeah, please. Please make your question.
So, I'm unclear on what you're doing. Who decided your involvement was needed and why? And why did you need to get started quick?
Good point. Maybe he was looking at you.
So the question was why did we need to get started quickly?
Who decided to hire them, why, and why did you need to get started
Why did we hire
quickly?
Susan and her team? We've been working with Susan around community engagement for 4 years. When we realized that it was important to get more people involved in community conversations, we searched all over the country to find people who had the best experience in engagement. And we were very fortunate that Susan and her team were just across the bridge in the room. So we started talking with her 4 years ago. We did some initial research about were cities and communities interested in working on this. We got very positive feedback, and since then we've worked with 10 cities around engagement.
But you haven't answered the why question.
I made the decision.
Why?
You haven't answered the why question. Have you used her elsewhere in the county? Why? Or why are you using her now?
I made the decision because the fact that I knew that we have so many controversial issues, and I had watched Susan work with cities on housing issues, and I thought this was a pretty good process to bring the community together, to see if we can come to some resolution.
But can she bring the resolution, but it has to go back through you guys?
It comes from them, ultimately.
Resolution of what?
Yeah.
The actual.
Peak traffic, that was the #1 topic that she found.
The specific question before us in a particular is, the county is now releasing the comprehensive transportation management plan. As we all know, it's been part of the process that's gone on for several years. This is their draft report for final and serious review. That's not looked upon as something that will happen overnight, but the process that we're engaging in and looking for help specifically is to help bring that to closure.
So
They're not, let me finish. They're not here as technical experts on it. They're here as process supporters. So they've outlined some of the things they do, and they offered up to the community and to the MCC. The question we have to ask is there a way to come forward in the mix now that the study is about to be released to do something that helps move that along. That's
And
sort of
if
the
somebody
picture.
brings up that there's no evacuation plan, will they facilitate
Well-
getting the community involved in evacuation
It's not a
ideas?
they, it's an us. That's
Okay,
the
they,
whole
the
point.
county, and the people, Joe, I forgot his name already.
So-
Claire,
Claire.
is they, because he's head of the planning study, right, for that part.
He's the lead from the
So-
council. But
That would be some issue you might tackle, is to get.
But,
community
so I
involved.
want to be, I think the evacuation's a great example, because that's something that, the county might have a piece of responsibility, but how the community chooses to organize itself, and what you're already doing with CERT and so forth. So that's a perfect example of something where, multiple agencies may have a piece of understanding evacuation, but the community itself needs to see all those pieces and see what's missing, what is ours to do, how do we want to communicate. So it's a true collaborative thing. I am not an expert on mobility or transportation or land use or any of these things. What we do is create a setting where multiple people are new people who aren't talking
You
about.
facilitate a public meeting.
We-
Right.
Yes, but I'd like to think it's a little bit more than that. There's a lot of people who come and do the one and done meetings. This is, if you'll excuse me, I've spent almost 30 years understanding how local community ecosystems work in terms of where the information flows and so forth. So those of you who are environmentalists may understand, I liken it to amending the soil. So I'm not here to tell you plant this, plant that, plant that. But if you're going to be putting your effort into things, if you have a more inclusive, more informed way of interacting that can sustain you through these big things, then whatever you all collectively decide to plant will, take
No,
what
but I mean, I think whoever brought that up, I thank you if you're still here. I mean, that's a really big thing after the big conflagration they had up in Paradise, California, that we should look at as a community. It's really important, and we also are in the tsunami evacuation zone.
So that's exactly, you have a process that incorporates how people
So
care
that
about
is
that.
actually a perfect example of an issue which we have discussed here
Right.
multiple times. And
But I don't think it's on this
and-
draft thing.
No, wait. And information we've tried to disseminate, and yet people think there's no such plan. And there is in fact such a plan. The Office of Emergency Services does in fact work on exactly that issue, and they do in fact have evacuation plans.
However, it's not part of the connected.
But that's
Bus
because
That's
it's
exactly-
That's part of
a more
community
global
education.
issue.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
I agree.
Okay, questions?
I'm confused. I thought we did have, that there was an agency responsible for evacuation.
Oh, yes.
And now I'm hearing that there's not.
No, there is, that's
And
what I just
I'm-
said.
I'm not
Clarify, see?
thinking- And I'm also, we've spent years talking about this stuff, so I'm just a little confused about why we're doing more of the talking about it, and rather than actually, solving problems and seeing some solutions about stuff we've been talking about for years. And, we do depend on the county to do this stuff for us. We don't have any power to do this stuff. So to say that we're gonna be talking about it and solving these problems is just really befuddling me, because we really don't have the resources to do it.
To go forward on these specific projects, you have to have a plan that's been adopted. And the point of working together in our conversation tonight is to ideally work with MCC if they're interested, to have a final review of all these things that are in that plan. And to make sure that it represents the interests of the community. And it incorporates evacuation issues if that's appropriate for this plan. And then have a plan that everybody feels they can support, or at least they've had an opportunity to contribute to. And then once the board adopts that, then that can be taken forward to the state and to Caltrans to get funding for the highest priority projects. So that's the sequence of events, and that's why this particular process is important. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
Bruce?
Okay, well, I feel like you have chosen the right consultant at least, because I feel some enthusiasm, okay? I feel like, okay. However, I've got a couple cynical questions for you, Susan. I would say it's not going out on a limb to say that the coast side is characterized by a lack of consensus. And what I've heard from a lot of people at any kind of public engagement is, okay, I put a bunch of stickies on the board, they listened to what I said, and then when the draft came back, none of my things were in there. So one of the cynical questions I have you is, there's a lot of work being done here, what is the real value of public involvement? Is it for their ideas, or is it for their buy-in?
Well, in common knowledge, we do a lot of work, what we call upstream. So it's getting a platform of community understanding about now, the situations of now. So the first thing that we think can add value to the community is you have a broader cross-section of folks who understand some basics. Not necessarily all the details, but we find that it really helps community members to understand certain basic facts that are obvious to you, but not to them. So just even having a base layer of that information. And then the part about the trade-offs, as the supervisor mentioned, I think some other people alluded to. Rather than say, the county's gonna do it, and you throw all their input in, and they have to make the trade-offs, you want a transparency. So this is, the process can be designed to identify some of the trickiest trade-offs. And again, not every community member is gonna wanna dive in and dig into that, but even to name those honestly and go, wow, we have to make some choices here. So I think it's just getting everybody up to the same page about now and what's possible. What are these options?
Okay, so that's perfect, because that leads me to my next cynical, cryptic question, which is, okay, but I am seeing a hard time getting people in my own household to engage when I come home and want to talk about it for a half an hour. How do you answer this? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So how do we get people to drink in that information? You can lead that to them, but then what?
I think that goes back to the point that Dave brought up. We in working with the different audiences and the different partners, it's understanding that if someone's new to an issue, what's the little bite size, here's 3 questions, here's this much information. So what we've learned over the years is, what is someone's appetite to start? You can't give them the whole fire hose. And one of the interesting things is, if you're a professional staffer, you have to put the whole plan in there, right? Because there's some people who want the whole plan. There's so many community members, they're going to need to, learn it this way. And that goes back to this plan is coming up, and yet for many community members, if you say, well, let's just come on down and talk about this plan, that's not going to make sense to them. You say, let's talk about all of these transportation plans and which one's this one, and they get to choose, what they're going to track and follow or pay attention to. So it's giving people just enough information, and then they choose to go deeper on the ones they want.
So at this point, I'm going to close the public discussion and questions and ask the council to discuss the issue, but first I want to frame it in a couple of ways. First of all, as we start this year, we're basically behind us is 30 years of progress or existence for the MCC. And we're now kicking off what I like to think of as the next 30 years, because that's really the time frame you have to have. I think at one point, one of the county people talked about visions up to 2025 or that goals. I mean, we're talking about a much longer frame of time in terms of what we have to set up. That's sort of in a broader sense. In a detailed sense, the technical review committee for this met in September. So you had 3 MCC members at that meeting. That was Claire and Dave and myself. We reviewed a draft that was circulated at that time. Since that time, we have not seen it at all until we saw this summary right here with the detailed report to come out in a week. And there's a lot of specifics. It also covers basically build-out, residential build-out, and other topics. So there's a lot in that to look at. And so we can't for a minute pretend that even though we attended that, we're back at ground zero. And certainly we have to look at it just to digest it at some level and have a discussion about it. So I think that's coming up for us. When I look at our schedule, we have the following considerations, because also we can only have a conversation when we're together. So we're not having a meeting on the 22nd. For the 15th, I did hold that on the 29th as really possibilities. It turned out from the responses I got back, only the 29th is a day in which I believe everybody here could attend a regular meeting there. You would check that.
That was a Wednesday?
Yeah, okay, so we have that date. Furthermore, that date happens to coincide with 3 weeks out when Supervisor Horsley felt that he would bring to a conclusion the consideration on the pump track. And so that's also an opportunity, the next opportunity will be together unless we schedule another special meeting in there. So my question in terms of the timetable is, that's really only a week or two after the report comes out, which we can look at individually, or, pairs of us can talk about it, as well as it will get out to the community. So in terms of responding to Susan's basic premises, where do we go from here? I think you presented your process capabilities well, and you have an understanding of your background. But now we sort of need to both look at, well, what's actually there. And the bottom line is that sometime after the release, there'll be a meeting of the MCC in which we'll create a letter that represents our view of the community response. So that's in a broad sense, but there's a lot of other input coming out there as well. So what I'm trying to get closure on tonight is, what do we think are the next good steps to help us go forward? Maybe, do you want to say something?
What we could offer to you, you now have the first draft, and we appreciate that there's going to be some time needed to look at that. The whole document will be available soon. You can look at that. What we could offer to you is, based upon our initial conversations and probably some additional input as we go forward with a little bit more research, we could come back to your meeting with a proposed outreach program that we would do in collaboration with MCC, and you all can discuss that if that would be of interest to you.
Well, I also think we're interested in just talking a little bit about what was seen or how to frame it. I mean, that is talking among ourselves even before you come
Sure.
to think about that.
And that would be fine. And what we could do is present a couple of options to you that could be discussed at that conversation in addition to the substance in the report.
But what I'd like to do is just have the council go around to give their thoughts on next steps. We'll start this time on your end, Barbara.
I'm very confused. I just don't get it. So I'm just gonna learn as I go with this.
Wait, the question I have back to that is, given that state, and I can sort of understand that, would it be helpful for us to meet again, at Creekside Road, to talk ourselves? But that's the constraint we have from a process standpoint.
So let me just ask a clarifying question. Is it just the common knowledge is to deal with this and the community?
No, it's the full release of the report, which will be next
Right.
week, and it runs to, how long is it?
It's not just the CTMP.
I think
It's general community communications.
try and speak to Barbara's conclusion. I think that the idea is to begin with a broader conversation with a large segment of the community that wants to engage and talk about mobility broadly, and inform them about all the different efforts that are underway right now. Reimagine Samtrans. We met with Samtrans on Monday to talk about how we can knit Reimagine Samtrans and Connect the Coast Side together, and learning from them what are they doing with that effort. And of course, Connect the Coast Side is of significant interest to the community. So looking at these different planning efforts that are underway now, looking at the multimodal trail, and so being able to bring all those different projects to one meeting, and as Susan was describing, giving people a chance to sort of self-select what do they want to focus on, but also helping those in the community who haven't ever, I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Jeff Ward.
Jeff, who, haven't ever come to a meeting, although you did come to Connect the Coast Side meetings, to help them understand the range of things that are underway, help them find a way in to give input, and use that as a beginning for a conversation, so that when when we have subsequent meetings that are focused on Connect the Coast Side later in the process, people have an understanding. If somebody says, oh yeah, but what about Reimagine Samtrans? So people actually know what that is and how it might influence what's going on in Connect the Coast Side. So I think that all these planning projects have their own pathway that they're on. But this gives us an opportunity to kind of knit them all together in a broad conversation and then get more people involved in the conversation, if that helps at all, and maybe not.
If you take a look right behind you, that map, that's just one town in the Midcoast, but imagine all the houses and parcels and people coming out there, only have 2 entrances onto Highway 1 to evacuate. So that, I think, really needs to be part of this plan.
Well, let's not go there.
Yeah.
I just have a clarifying question as well. Actually, I'm going to direct it to Supervisor Horsley, or maybe Susan. So Susan's met with 18 people in the community, talking about a range of different issues. Mobility came through as the #1 issue. So this has been, the question is, has it been decided that mobility is the thing that Susan and her team is definitely going to focus on? Is that our?
No.
No.
No, this is a broad range of issues on the whole coast. Mobility is certainly one a critical issue,
Yeah.
but it's not the only issue. So it was really kind of a way of empowering you, essentially, to take charge of, the direction of the Midcoast. And, if people get together and are really united on a particular issue, you have a pretty good chance of getting success. It's not just the county, it's also the state. We could say all we want to Kevin Mullen, but unless the community is really behind it, he's really responsive, but he's more responsive to you as a collective as opposed to an individual. So it's really a way of empowering you and the community to make decisions for yourself for the future.
Can I comment?
Yeah.
I share some of Barbara's confusion, but I think that a couple of things. Since this is correlated with Connect the Coast Side, it seems that the mobility would be a prime thing to look at. But Connect the Coast Side, as somebody was saying, involves a lot more than just transportation, and there are other things that we might end up looking at. I think part of the confusion is coming from, at least in my mind, that this is an intuitive approach to a community organization. It's like, oh, let's see how this works kind of thing. Let's see what we can put together. And it's doing that approach with something that's very policy and planning oriented. So these are 2 totally different ways of looking at what's happening in the community. And I think that, and what I'm hoping is that this organization will help us synthesize the intuitive part with the detailed part. And I'm wondering, I think this is just too complicated intellectually for us to make a good decision on what we're doing here tonight at 9:45. And I'm wondering if it makes sense to have a small group of perhaps 3 people meet with Susan and try to figure out exactly what we're trying to decide.
Well, the concern I have about that is, I guess, responding to what Dan talked about in terms of transparency, and I think if we don't have a conversation with all of us at this level, then we won't be able to satisfy that.
On the other hand, we don't really know what we're talking about.
No, and basically what I was trying to lead you is, since the CTP itself isn't out, you can't say you know it. I'm just talking about, we as a group want together to talk about it with the Susan president, which is, I think, a productive discussion, and I think if we subset it, most more available.
Is there a question on the table that we can actually?
So I was actually going to propose exactly that. So forget the CTMP. Just talk about common knowledge and community information, because I really think that's what common knowledge is here for. It's not to resolve CTMP and community involvement on CTP. That might be part of this.
Isn't the question just do we want to work?
What I was going, and we can't make a motion because it's an informational item, but we can have a consensus of the council. Are we interested in working with the county and common knowledge to improve communication flow to the community and from the community And my answer is absolutely yes. And I think we don't need to vote on anything today, we can't vote on anything today, we can put it on the agenda item. But what I'm asking is, do we have a consensus as a council that we think we would like to improve communications with our community? Be working with Commonwealth.
So let's just.
Can I add something?
Sure, Don.
Just to clarify, if I can, it's kind of almost not going tonight. And we were talking about, with the planning about the CTMP, finishing that up. And we talked about public meetings. And, you know, I expressed to them, and they expressed to me as well, I said, I don't want to go to one more of those meetings with everybody screaming at us. And so that's when we decided to bring in common knowledge, because we thought, and we didn't think, they're not the subject matter experts, but we wanted to do is get a community conversations so that we are not screaming at each other. And so that was the goal of it.
Right.
And so that's kind of what we're doing. And I would say to you that this is an opportunity for you, because you're gonna get county staff, and if anything you need financially, we'll make sure you have this process. Now, it may work, it may not, but you've got nothing to lose.
So, I'm going to paraphrase what you said, Dad. I think you said, in terms of the consideration of do you want to work with them, that would be yes, and to me, the next step would be then to have a conversation with them.
Yeah. Yeah, and it would, because it's gonna be the whole council, it has to be an open meeting.
Okay, understand.
Should we go around right now?
I think Susan wanted to say something on that subject.
Have her one way or another.
I just, in terms of how, but the county, again, the county has, partnered with us. So I love that you all are saying the brand name over and over, but I understand that when we have been working in the Home for All, there were county staff and partners and so forth. So we provide expertise, and it's been a collaboration. And the other part of the collaboration, when we've worked with cities, is we didn't come in and just present a whole plan to them. We actually met with a subset and made sure it made sense to them. So some of you are like, I'm not certain how this works. Do you have a protocol where a couple of your could have a subcommittee that we could meet with to plan this, and then when we come back and you have your whole open discussion, it's gonna make sense because some of you figured out how you were gonna make it make sense.
I understand that, and the reason I framed it, so the question is, in the follow-up, would we like to meet as a group or with a subset? And that's what I'd like to hear from the council.
I think it makes sense to meet as a subset, because not to pull something over at everybody else, but just to get the concepts and the language down so it can be presented.
Barbara?
I'd like so.
Oh, okay.
I think it will not work if we don't all sit down and talk about it.
I'm also in favor of all. Michelle?
I think a subset would be better.
Mark?
Like all.
Dan?
So the choice is
All or
getting
subset?
together with, common knowledge,
Whether it's
Susan.
all of us
All
or
of us
subset?
or a small portion.
But could you have a subset help prepare something that comes back to the whole?
And I don't think it's all of us in multiple meetings. I think the first one needs to be all of us, and we all have a shared understanding.
So, Dan?
Yeah, all.
All? So I think then we're in favor of all of us meeting, you yourself and maybe someone else in the county to discuss it. And in our structure, that's really, we refer to as a retreat. In some places, you can go ahead and kind of respond to this.
But to answer your specific question, yes, a subset of us, up to 3, can work with you to put that together. So
I have a strong recommendation that we will be able to prepare something faster that is better suited to this community than trying to do it. That is just a planning process that I would highly recommend. I think we're gonna get further faster, and be able to come back and discuss something more concrete among all of you. It's hard to co-create.
Were you talking about the subset of the community you?
See you around.
Actually talk to all of us then?
Yes, I would strongly recommend
So
that.
that's like a two-step process to do what we're talking.
I think you'll be satisfied with results better than another meeting where you're like, wait, what?
No, Okay, but we get to a meeting with you, with all of us.
Yes,
Okay.
but
With-
it would be
to
great
launch
to
the
have a couple
process,
folks,
Is that clear, people?
That sounds perfect to me.
That's what I would think we should do as well.
Okay. So, well, first of all, let me just find out which three people are interested in doing that.
I'm willing to do it.
Three women, four? Okay, so that's four of you. Laura, Michelle, and I are not.
I mean, since I think I have a pretty good grasp of what's going on, I don't think I need to be in that subset.
Wait,
we may have members who have expertise that might be useful in this.
Better to have the grasp than to go in like not knowing.
What did you say?
But just, you know, who might have a particular enthusiasm or expertise in this area.
I do have a community development message.
You're in.
Okay. So Barbara, you want to put that? Dan, you do? Now, this requires going to a meeting outside of regular time, so
Well,
make the meeting.
yeah, we like ability to
So,
schedule it.
Dave, are you?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Step aside?
I'm more than willing to step aside if other people want to do it.
Okay, so we have three people then, to meet with you in discussions to set it up. And we'll connect you with them, but leave it to that group to have a forward-looking discussion.
Should we coordinate through you?
Yeah, coordinate with them,
And
your point, but
for
I'll
the
put you in touch.
subcommittee meeting and then a date to report
Now,
back.
my question is, so once we come back and talk as a council, we have to be in a public meeting? So the meeting on the 29th still seems to me like the best candidate time to do that. So that gives our group of three working with you.
Is 3 weeks enough time for you to set that up, you think?
Yeah, I think we do that.
I mean, for doing this, you can get the three of them all together, you can do one at a time. Basically, as a group, it's not required that you all sit down with them at the same time. Those are just the three people.
And may I also interview anybody else? So we'd love to be able to have connected with everybody.
Yeah,
Your interview
everybody on
process.
council has a one-on-one opportunity.
Absolutely. It's
And
just-
then,
You just have to watch out for issues, which I'm sure you're going
Yeah. In specifics, we're looking for you and those three people to come back with a meeting for the structure on the 29th, but you can talk to all of us before.
excellent, okay.
The 29th is, can I say something? The 29th has the pump track follow-up, probably the dog follow-up.
I think there's a dog follow.
Isn't it? Okay, that's February, okay. There's the Cypress Point meeting follow-up.
Well,
There's
until we
that's a
have-
lot.
Until we have the Cypress Point meeting, which is next week, I don't know that there's really a follow-up there. I think there is, that's a meeting to accomplish something, and then the next time we'll really hear from them is probably 2 or 3 months down the road. So, ready to bring the project forward.
And the other thing we could do is we could do it at our retreat. We already are scheduling a retreat, so we could spend 2 hours at the retreat.
We've got trouble finding the time for the retreat, so the first time we can get together is really the 29th.
So it doesn't have to be the first time.
No, but I'm saying, by having that meeting, we can then look at where we're at on the road.
Yeah, but I think Bear's point is the 29th now looks like it could be very busy.
Well, there's really, I mean, there was one other group that wanted on, but they would have to be going at 12, so I don't know that the pump track is Supervisor Morrison saying, but I think that's still not a. Okay, so,
Are they gonna postpone the Redwood City planning thing on the mid-end
No.
project?
no, that's going ahead.
That's going ahead
So
before you
we
guys
are
get ready.
postponing, we are canceling our meeting on the 22nd, so we as council members can go.
We've written 3 letters on that project, and they've been bundled into a single document to the planning commission to hear, which represents our views.
They do it here, or they do it at?
After the library.
Okay. Okay, so then I think we're set for a meeting on the 29th. We have a subcommittee to work with you, as well as one interview you conduct. And I think that would be a full enough point for me to.
So can we decide on the retreat date tonight?
I know I take it, but I'll have to follow more. People did not come up with a time.
Excuse me, Len, Supervisor Orson said I could ask quick questions.
Please state that,
What is this is important to the community? It was the status of the Railroad Cove and, how close are we to getting any kind of a feasibility study for a pedestrian underpass after?
We're not. No feasibility study.
We're still filming. Thank you.
We're not. Although we asked all that. That's our meeting, all that.
Okay. And the status of the project, Railroad Cove?
Say that again. What?
I heard from another member that there may be, the Caltrans is putting the project on the shelf for 10 years.
No, what you heard, because I met with them, and we were talking about the Graywell Cove, and I asked them about their plans for the Highway 1, and they said they have nothing in the 10-year plan. It had nothing to do with Graywell Cove. On Graywell Cove, they say that the price tag has risen to $2.4 million. And
For the lake?
the price tag to build it has risen to $2.4 million.
To build a crosswalk.
Yes,
Not just the crosswalk, it's a
Well,
big
yeah.
project.
It wasn't our idea to do what, it was theirs, because they said, oh, putting a crosswalk with just rapid flashing, the rectangular flashing beacons isn't safe. I said, wait, so you got nothing here now.
How Kevin Mullen?
That was the irritating part. Wait a second. So that's what I mean, so
So is the project moving forward or?
I don't like coming up with
Too much of us is talking.
I don't like, we've spent on that thing so far, but we probably have already spent about almost $1 million on what we planned. They made us, well, the improvement in the parking lot, the crosswalk, the ADA compliant on both sides of the roadway and the walkway. And they want us to maintain it. I'm saying, we're not gonna maintain it, because we don't have anybody to maintain that thing. And the beach is not ADA compliant, you can't get down to the beach. So why make it ADA compliant, but they have jacked the price up to about $2.5 million. And I'm not willing to pay $2.5 million for that. And then the other thing is that my other concern was that, wait a second, you're holding us to a standard that you're not meeting yourself.
So, Don, thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.
So it sounds like it's on
It's a
hold.
long day.
It's on.
So the meeting is adjourned.
Actually, 9 o'clock.
Are we adjourned?
Thank you, Don, for sticking with it.
Are we done?
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.